Good afternoon, everyone. This is our regular Tuesday, July 18th, Board of County Commissioners work session. And the first part of this day, we are in our joint work session with our Open Space and Trails Board trustees. So welcome, everybody, and thank you. We do this on a quarterly basis. It's a good opportunity for us to keep apprised in terms of what Open Space and Trails is doing and for them to get some of our feedback as well. So we're going to start the presentation today with the Prince Creek Trail Management Plan, final draft, and Gary will explain what that means and the process and how we've gotten to this point today. We'll have a short presentation on the draft plan. Time allowed, because we're going to be on a very tight time frame, I'll allow some short public comments, and then we'll bring it back to both boards.
So, George, before we begin,
yes,
I just want to disclose that I have an involvement with an organization that has a concern about a property along this section of Prince Creek Road. And so since I recused myself from the board's discussion about this at executive session a week or so ago, I'm going to excuse myself from the official table, but I'm going to stay in the room as a member of the public since this is a public meeting. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Patty. So, again, our agenda is we start with a citizen board interview at 1 o'clock.
I'd like to make the same announcement that...
You need to do it
You
on...
have to come up to a mic.
So I'll second Patty's announcement and recuse myself from this conversation. I'll be attending as a member of the public.
Okay. So again, just so everyone knows, at 1 o'clock, we're back to our regular agenda as Board of County Commissioners. So we will roll. So I'll turn it over to Open Space.
Great. Thank you, George. Thanks, everyone. I'm Gary Tenenbaum. I'm the Director of Pickens County Open Space and Trails, and I'm here with Lindsay Utter, who is the Planning Manager, and Jesse Young, who is the Environmental Planner for Open Space and Trails. We're here to talk about the Prince Creek Open Space Management Plan. And this has been a long process. We've been in the works on this area for trails and potential parking for many, many, many years. And so with the recent acquisition of the trail and the bullpen, the Open Space and Trails program has gone through a management planning process. And our team will discuss the details of the plan. This is a little unusual. We don't always do a joint meeting for adoption of open space management plans. The BOCC, back in about 2005, delegated to the Open Space and Trails Board the adoption of management plans. All action items that come out of the management plans that don't have budget have to go through the budget process, and that's where the BOCC will definitely be part of it. But all management plans are always in consultation with the BOCC. This time, we're right together in one happy group, so we can do that all at once. But in the end, it is the Open Space and Trails Board that usually adopts these plans. So why are we here? We're here to discuss an issue that has been brewing for many years of an area that has seen really big growth in trails. The BLM on the Crown is a big area for the overall management of this area, and so the BLM went through a planning process, and in their planning process they came up and basically designated the Crown as a special recreation management area. It's got a lot of use, and then there's no real infrastructure for parking and trails. The BOCC and the Open Space Board has been working on that, and so that's why we're here today, to try to solve some of these issues. So today, as George said, what we'd like to do is do a quick presentation of what's in the plan, and then turn it over to George and Wayne to do some public comment, and then bring it back to the boards for discussion and potential adoption. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jesse to give you the overview.
Thanks, Gary. So as Gary said, kind of to give you guys some more context, we're looking at this 1.75-mile stretch that extends down Prince Creek Road from where the current trails begin at the BLM boundary.
Yes. Thank you.
Sure. I've got double
It
mic.
doesn't really amplify, but it captures it.
It doesn't amplify, we're just getting on TV.
So as long as you
just speak
can
a
hear
little
me.
more loudly.
So we're looking at this area that extends down from where the current trails in the cattle guard connect to the BLM land down to the Pickens County and Garfield County boundary, and then extending down all the way to the intersection of Highway 133 and the Garfield County Road 111. So that's kind of the general area. As Gary said, this area has seen increasing use primarily from all user types, but a lot of mountain bike use, which is creating issues at the intersection of Handy Drive and the Prince Creek Road. And so we're kind of just looking at exploring ways to separate the uses along this stretch, as well as kind of address the parking concern. So as far as the public process that we've taken to address the concerns in this area, it started off with an open house in May as well. That was really well attended. We got over 60 community members, and many, many public comment forms were received. We received comments from a number of our stakeholder groups that are all listed here, as well as, So, and then we went ahead from those comments and drafted the draft plan, which was put out on June 6th, and held a board meeting to present that plan, and received comments from the public there, as well as comments following that plan in the open house on June 19th, which had about 20 community members present. And then we had public comments due at the end of June, and then worked out some pretty minor plan changes and language changes that resulted in the plan that you guys have in your packets today, that we're seeking to get your approval on. So again, just to touch on this, is the general area that we're looking at. And when you zoom in a little bit closer, Open Space and Trails has been working since 2016 to acquire both fee simple lands and trail easements through this area. And the green is the trail easements, and the pink is identifying the fee simple land. And the width of the trail along the that parallels Prince Creek Road ranges from about 20 feet at the smallest point to over 100 feet in some sections. So it's a constrained corridor, but there is opportunity to create a trail that parallels the road in this area. So this map kind of identifies where those easements are. In June, we closed on the Ferris Trail easement, which was one other one. And then the Bullpen open space is a 4.9 acre parcel that has been acquired as part of the other fee simple lands, and that parcel has restrictive covenants on it as well, or all of them have restrictive covenants, I guess, that limit the uses of the corridor to non-motorized use, and dogs in this area would have to be on leash. The thing with the Bullpen parcel is that we've also reserved the right to resell it if it's not used as a parking area, but it does have the potential to park and accommodate cars in a phased approach that we could do about 30 cars to start and expand as needed. So that's, and then as the map shows, this is kind of the area where the current parking is pretty unsustainable and congested, especially in the shoulder seasons when the use is at its highest, which we're seeking to address through this plan. So as far as a little bit more detail on partner and public comments, we received a lot of comments ranging from all of our different partner agencies and groups. There were concerns voiced about the location of the parking area and where this ultimately ends up and how it's managed in the future. as far as kind of being open from dawn to dusk and what amenities are needed in a future parking lot, as well as the need for better signage and maps to make it a more user-friendly area. We did receive strong support for directional trails wherever is possible. With the constraint on the width of the trail, it's not possible to do that in all areas, but we have been looking at it and trying to figure out where that is feasible. So getting into some of our management actions, the first one is kind of looking at the options for the accommodating parking. And the one option that we have right now, that is option 1, is the bullpen parking area. And then we're still working with the BLM and looking at other possible locations that may be better or offer different opportunities. So we haven't settled on that, and we will go back to our board to finalize that after this plan is approved. Some of the things that we are evaluating in this study, or that we will be, is the constructability and the impacts to the natural environment, including the watershed and wildlife habitat where it parallels Prince Creek, the location and ability to serve the needs of the hiking and biking community, parking capacity with the goal to provide a minimum of 30 parking spots and room for future expansion as the area continues to see more use, construction and maintenance costs, vehicular and trail user circulation. Crossing the road has been a concern as the road curves and sight lines are limited, so we want to make sure that wherever we're proposing parking, it's safe, or as safe as possible scenario. And then, sight lines. One thing that I should mention is that we're not proposing in a parking lot lower down here to accommodate trailer parking for horses or motorized uses. That, in our conversations with the BLM, would be accommodated in the upper lot. And that is really more accessible to where the BLM has designated their equestrian and motorized routes that are separate from the bike routes. So, like I said, we'll evaluate these options more and go back to our board for more direction and working through kind of a site plan for what that would look like. The trail amenities or kind of parking amenities that we are looking to include would be a kiosk with information about the signage or information about the trail area, signage, as well as a structure for shade and a seasonal porta potty. So that would, while the trail would be open year round, the porta potty would serve spring, summer, and fall seasons, and then be removed for the winter. And we have had feedback that a year-round toilet would be a good feature, so we can look into a vault toilet in the future, wherever that if it's allowed on the land that we land on. So, and then kind of as typical with any of our construction projects, any disturbance would be restored to native plant materials, and we would work to kind of minimize any impacts. The rules and regulations for the parking area would follow our general Title 12 regulations, which limit use from dawn to dusk, no camping or campfires, and no off-leash dogs, which have been concerns for some people. So that is the parking option, and so the timing on that, we would want to start as soon as this plan is adopted, kind of moving forward with looking at where this could go. The Prince Creek Trail is our second, and this would be a phased approach that can begin as soon as the end of this month with volunteer effort to construct it. It would parallel Prince Creek Road for the most part, and as I said, we're looking at where we can accommodate directional trails, so uphill and downhill routes for different user groups, but our goal is to kind of create user-friendly and widely a user-friendly trail experience that minimizes kind of safety concerns and user conflict. No motorized uses would be allowed, as I mentioned, and dogs in the area must be leashed. So phase one, as I said, would go from the bullpen parking area up to where the current cattle guard is at the start of the BLM trail network. And then phase two would be the remainder part that we own, and then we'll, as a follow-up action item, we're going to continue to seek ways to extend the trail further down to the intersection of 133. So we will work with the BLM to make sure the connection to the Crown Mountain Trails is smooth and kind of a seamless connection so that everything flows together. We will work with the BLM and CPW on installing a kiosk at the trailhead and trail signage so that it's user-friendly for both visitors as well as locals. And then the Town to Crown Education Campaign is our next action item. And this is an important one because regardless of the parking and where we are able to accommodate it, we want to encourage people to ride from Carbondale where possible, and extending the trail experience and the off-road option will certainly go a long way in making that more appealing for a number of users, but definitely won't capture everybody. The road may, is still going to be used by road bikers, and some people will choose to use the road or to drive up to the trail. So, but we do want to work with partners on figuring out ways to incentivize or encourage people to do that. And then the trail connection from the Crystal Trail to the Crown, as I mentioned, we're still going to work to acquire properties and easements along that segment so that it can eventually extend all the way down. And then the last kind of sections are maintenance, leasing, and enforcement action items, and these include kind of weed management and reintroduction of native vegetation, which is typical of all of our projects. The area along Prince Creek where the trail would go has some invasive species issues, so we will work to improve those areas as we can. The bullpen management or resale, after we decide where we're putting parking, if it's not the bullpen, then we have the option to resell that property as an unrestricted parcel, so it wouldn't be limited by the current covenants that are on the property. And once a parking lot alternative is provided to the public, then we'll go ahead and close and enforce the existing parking location at the intersection of Handy Drive because people will have the option to park elsewhere. And so we'll work with the County Sheriff's Department on that. And then as far as commercial and special uses, the commercial and special uses for the easements and the bullpen parcel are subject to our Title 12 policies and the county code, as well as the restrictive covenants placed on the property. So any uses will have to be permitted through our process. And that pretty much brings us to where we are today as for final plan adoption, and seeking any feedback you guys have for us.
Great, thank you. Will you leave that up for
Yep.
a while? So before I go to public comments, and if there are any questions any board members have, not comments at this point, but just questions to clarify anything that has been presented or something that you didn't see. Greg?
Yeah, just one question, Jesse, on weed management. I noticed it's on fee simple only. Is that intentional? Is there any agreement regarding trail creation on an easement, and are we responsible for management of weeds on that?
Yeah, I think that was an oversight. I'll fix that. We would do weed management along the whole trail and any parking area.
Great, thanks.
Steve, then Howie?
How wide is the easement going along the tie bar part? In reading the public comments, there's a discussion of having one wider trail or two, an up and downhill in that part, and I'm wondering, like, how many feet do we have to work with there?
The trails easement from the Crown to the where we have fee simple ownership is about 0.75 miles. And that's where the width is pretty constrained in this area here, but we do have some right-of-way area that we can use as well, adjacent to the roadway. So we've been looking at that option. Where sight lines are not a problem as far as kind of you can see the uphill and downhill traffic. For instance, in this meadow, we can go down to one trail to have, and then kind of where it's a little bit wider up here, we can look at finding room for the directional trails.
There's no easy answer, because when we were negotiating it with Tybar, it had to work with their cattle operation too. So it's 20 feet, it's 30 feet, it's back to 20, it's up to 100 in some spaces, but you also have Prince Creek in there, so there are some constraints on that stuff. So it just varies through the whole thing.
Howie?
Jesse, my question is about BLM and parking. Several comments or sentences are in here about the
Is your
BLM.
microphone on? Okay, just pull it a little closer then.
Okay, back to my question. BLM and parking, several comments are made in the proposed plan about the BLM and its parking plans. Could you elaborate on what that means? Are they, do they have a plan? Do they have money? Do they have a timeline? Or have they chosen a place? It's a little confusing from the text to understand where the BLM is. I've heard that they're in a NEPA process for parking or something to that effect.
So there's currently parking on the top of the Crown and in the...
Can you show where that is?
Sure. Up here. There's currently parking, well, here as well as in the middle. What they are currently doing they're going through an EA to look at what was part of the land exchange. Given the current status of that, we have not received the latest update on that EA, but they're currently in a lawsuit, so it would seem that that EA may be on hold. But as part of that future EA, anything that comes out of that, they're looking at adopting the trails that would be the entrance to the Crown, as well as anything as far as the camping areas. Right now there's a lot of dispersed camping in this section, so looking at designating camping locations and the parking with those camping locations. As far as a lower down parking area, that hadn't been a part of their original EA proposal, but it's something that we can discuss with them.
Where is that intended to be or envisioned to be?
There's one meadow that currently has a trail through it. It's a pretty small meadow. I don't know, roughly here. But it would be kind of, it's not the entrance, let's put it that way. It's not the entrance to the trails, but it's close to the lower down portion of the Crown entrance from this side.
So the goal of our planning process is we're working with the BLM on this entire thing. They don't have a parking option that's going to solve the issue at Handy Drive. No. So we're working with them to figure out, the lower down, the midways, the upper ways, to have a holistic view of how people are going to park up and down this road. So, and that's what we're working on now. What we see also, as you saw your comments from Colorado Parks and Wildlife, they would like more parking down lower and this trail to be open year-round to get more people on the lower sections where the wildlife habitat is not as significant on the upper sections. So, having a holistic parking approach where you capture some at the beginning and maybe more of them at the beginning, capture some who want to keep going up, and then obviously there's a big one at the top. That's a holistic view of this entire thing. With the lawsuit, I don't know how long this EA is going to take, and so, and we don't know through their EA process what we're going to get. So,
And they
Thanks.
presently have endorsed the parking being located further down.
That's true.
To this, because Rachel,
Just
to this,
to
yeah, go
follow
ahead.
up on Howie's question and your answer.
Maybe
also just-
Howie, swing the mic over there.
Mike.
And just so everyone knows what you mean by upper. Upper is where East Sopris and West Sopris come together at the top. And that's long been a parking area for all users, all seasons. Is the Haynes parcel the parcel that you are referring to, the land exchange parcel? One that would be middle, sort of?
No, there's another one in the middle.
So I drove it again yesterday just to see what kind of use was going on mid-July and parking, et cetera. And so the middle is that where they have boulders and things.
Yes. I believe
Okay,
so.
and then the lower one is the Haynes parcel if it becomes available to the BLM.
It's correct,
the one
and it's
in-
not currently proposed to be parking, so on the BLM side.
But that's the parcel that's in
It
litigation.
has a meadow,
That has a lawsuit.
correct.
Okay. So they, BLM, just hearkening back to, it took 20-some years for them to come up with the BLM Special Recreation Management Area designation for the Crown as a whole. When they do that sort of special recreation management, is there a history of them providing parking and trailheads for the use and demand that results from that designation? I mean, is that a future possibility? Do we know?
Right now, it's not. And so that's why we're partnering with them. It's like what we do with the Forest Service and other agencies. We're both recreation and open space and land management organizations, and we're trying to find ways to solve infrastructure needs throughout all these corridors. We did it on the other side of the Crown at Glacier. The BLM there's a lot of mountain biking that was happening at Buckhorn, a trail, which is a BLM trail. And, you have the Rio Grande through there. There was a small little parking lot that was trying to service all of this. And yes, the county did buy Glacier, which is more access. And so we had to accommodate that access with infrastructure that would actually, accommodate the people that wanted to drive there. But we also have trails, and hopefully, and we do see a lot of people that bike here. So, in the end, that's what we're solving a big issue with parking, but we're also solving a safety issue with the bikes on the road. And you get your own mic.
I get my
Special.
own mic.
Old style too.
Thanks.
Thank you, Gary. And
You're welcome.
Glacier is a great example of that, and I'm just curious if on the Prince Creek side of the Crown, that's a possible future location.
There's potential. The problem is on the BLM is there's not a ton of area to create the size of parking lots you would need for this, plus capturing people higher up where they want to be lower down. If we create the trails that we're mimicking the design of what the trails are up above it on where they are now in the Monte Carlo and all that stuff. So hopefully more and more people don't drive all the way up that road and all the way onto the dirt road. They stop lower down. Or if you can capture a trail lower down, will you capture more people to actually ride from Carbondale? That these are the type of things that we have seen. Yes, you can do that. And so hopefully here we solve the issue with a lot of driving on a rural road and providing trail options that people really like and enjoy.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Rachel?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for all the hard work and the open houses and getting this to this point. I have a question that follows a little on what Howie had raised. And I recall going through this process with the BLM when they designated this as a special recreation area, and our concerns about overuse and wildlife interface, and we get grazing up there, a little bit of everything. I don't think a commitment was made to increased enforcement by the BLM on that area. I think that was one of our things we really were looking for in the designation. And so it just strikes me that it would be well worth trying to, as an action plan in the management plan, to be pursuing a memorandum of understanding with Colorado Parks and Wildlife, BLM, and Picken County Open Space and Trails about how do we manage the broader area once people have left the parking lots, because this will be more of an inducement to use the area. It will be on the maps. Here's a great parking spot. You know, it's not harder to get to. And while that might be a long-term goal and difficult to accomplish, I think it should be one of the management plan actions so that, you know, I don't know that we have the resources, and we've talked about the slippery slope before of doing the BLM's job for them and the Forest Service job for them on an ongoing basis. But at the same time, I certainly would like to cooperate and be a partner in that. And so I could see trying to reach a memorandum of understanding where BLM will have a ranger up there once a week on Saturdays, and we'll have a ranger up there once a week on Sundays, and maybe Colorado Parks and Wildlife will touch in and look at it on Wednesdays. But something, especially in the first few years, you know, so that the ethic of how to use this area and the wildlife concerns in this area are really communicated to our user public. So that's one thing I'd like to consider having added, that we pursue a memorandum of understanding with those three for the broader management of the area as people leave the parking area or come back. The second is just, if we're going to have to take a look at it, I don't know, but dust suppression on the dirt roads. If it ended up just being a higher up lot and more people were going higher up, I'm pretty sure we'd start to hear from the same residents in the area that now they're not parking in front of us, but they're making a huge dust cloud that drifts down. So I just think we should look at will there be needs for dust suppression or even assistance with the BLM in smoothing out the road going forward. Thank you.
All right, I think I'll open this up for public comment, which is a little unusual for us because it's a joint session, but what I like, anybody who wishes to make a public comment, you'll need to grab a mic, identify yourself, who you're with, if you're with a particular organization, and please keep it to 3 minutes, so that will allow other people the opportunity as well.
George, in the identification process, could we request where you live, where your residence is?
Sure. And again, this is public comment. It's not going to be a dialogue. It's not going to be a discussion. 3 minutes public comment.
Hello, I'm Leslie Thomas with the Roaring Fork Valley Horse Council. I live in Picken County for 30 years now, not far from this area. So this map, if you'll notice, well, go back to the map you just had. You'll see at the top where the parking lot is, that is where they want the horse truck and trailer parking. It's 30 minutes from the bottom of where the bullpen parking lot is in a drive and up a very steep hill. And then from there, the trail is very steep. It's a 2-track meant for the four-wheelers and the dirt bike riders to use. Actually, it's designated on the Crown Trail for that use. And to say that the horse people should go straight up that more than 20% grade out of traveling 30 minutes up that road and then get on a trail with dirt bikers and four-wheelers is frankly not fair to any of the parties. It's not a good trail experience for anybody. Now, can you flip back to the map, please? It shows the trail that has the designations of the, so if you look there, you see where the bullpen parking lot is, and then you see where you have the little icon of the bicycle, the hiker, the dog, and the horseback rider. Right in there are several really awesome trails that access, there's 2 of them actually, at a great grade, the lower part of the crown, on this side, which is a different section of the crown than the glacier side accesses, the trails that we put in over there. Obviously, the BLM does, in the signs, there's signs there. You will have noticed if you've read our packet, that show that they're anticipating horseback riders are going to ride on those trails. So I'm not sure I understand. Do you want people to park on the road there? Or do you want people to park at the top and ride down, or ride back up, or just ride down the middle of the road? I'm not understanding this. And then we already talked about, was mentioned, we don't have any clue about what's going to happen with the BLM, or how accountable they can be, or if they can even manage this land, much less put in a parking lot. So since OST, with our funds, has purchased the lands and the parking lot, as a horseback rider, representing many horseback riders, I feel like you've left us off the map. After the fact, they put us in there as, as a partner, but no one ever had a discussion with us at any time whatsoever about this trail, where it's going, where the parking's going, or anything. And only until we submitted our packet did they actually put us back into this plan. So I think that, and they call this still today a hiking and biking trail. You have other members in your Pickens County, and they own big tracts of land of which are covering you're collecting the taxes for. So I don't think, I'm asking you, please, I'm begging you, please, to consider the other users. And I don't even know how the neighborhood has been contacted. I'm not part of that neighborhood. I live over the hill. But, I just think that this thing has been rushed along. And even though it's been a very many years process and thinking and planning, the absolute public input part of it has been really compressed. And we're one group that has not been contacted or just this plan discussed with. So I'm just begging you, please, to reconsider. I don't think you want trucks and trailers parking on this road, like the bicyclists have been doing, and you don't want us driving up this road either. Please, and this road is connected to a lot of horse property all over the place. So please consider accommodating. You have a huge parking lot. It's huge in the bullpen. And if one day in the
Leslie,
future...
you'll need to wrap up.
Yeah, okay. So that's really all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to make any public comments?
Hi, my name is Sloan Shoemaker. I live on County Road 111, which is the Garfield County side of the line that continues into Pickens County as Prince Creek Road. Speaking as a private citizen today, I appreciate the county open spaces intention to address a problem and solve a problem here. I think we all know this problem has been developing over time, certainly impacting Handy Drive. So thanks for doing what you're doing. I don't have a whole lot of vested in the solutions that you're proposing here. But what really is of concern to me as a resident who lives along County Road 111 or Prince Creek Road is traffic impacts. And you guys have all recognized that traffic is an important impact to manage for. Rachel, thank you for your comments about an MOU working with the other jurisdictions. I don't know if you mentioned Garfield County in that, but I'd love to see Garfield County Sheriff patrolling the road more. We're getting high-speed uses along that road with children and animals and bicyclers and walkers at jeopardy there. So that's all. Thank you for taking the effort to solve this problem. Please consider the traffic on the road as part of the extended, holistic approach to managing uses of this area, which are sure to increase as you add more infrastructure and accommodate more people. Thanks.
Thank you, Sloan. Anybody else?
No, you go ahead. No.
Hi, my name is Mike Pritchard. I am the director of the Roaring Fork Mountain Bike Association. I live here in Aspen, but I represent mountain bikers from here to Newcastle and beyond. So firstly, I want to thank all the county staff that's worked on this to date. I know that this has been incredibly complicated to put together these acquisitions and these easements. And we do have an issue. The parking is the problem. and it's not going to go away unless we can come up with a solution. So I want to urge you today to adopt this plan. I think we do have a good plan in front of us. But I want to spend a few minutes or a couple minutes just talking about the crown and the way it's currently used and why we're probably going in the direction of directional trails as part of the solution here on this corridor, and then also why horses are probably not the best trail users for this unique trail system. The Haynes parcel has got an incredibly dense system of single-track trails, and the character of the trails in that area is dense oak brush where the branches are overhanging. Many of the branches are just barely over 6 feet tall. I have to duck down below those branches, but that's part of what the trail users love. It's actually that character of the trail. There's also the windy nature of the trails. So we do already have some conflicts because of the high use when these trails are two-way trails. So going with directional trails on this access trail is going to prevent that kind of conflict in the future. It's going to be a strong solution. I think also moving the parking closer to town will cause people to ride their bikes from Carbondale. Living up here in Aspen, I'm probably not one of those people, so we do need parking. And parking lower down on Prince Creek Road is going to make more sense than pretending that people are going to drive halfway up onto existing BLM or onto the Haynes parcel. But nonetheless, some people will choose to drive up to the divide and do a ride that starts up there, perhaps a shuttle with younger kids. So I want to just conclude and say that investing in this kind of infrastructure is wise. You know, this is going to make our communities stronger. It's going to make the people who live here healthier. It's going to cause businesses to move to Pickens County and to Carbondale in a very positive way. So thank you for your support of the plan.
Thank you. Yes?
Hi. My name's Rita Strong. I'm president of the Roaring Fork Horse Council, but I'm also, I live in Pickens County and I live in Emma. I've lived there for 45 years. What we have created to this point with the glacier trails and now with the expected expansion onto the crown is a playground for outdoor enthusiasts that is very heavily weighted to the mountain bikers. Now, I want you to understand that I've lived in Emma and I have ridden the crown with my horses for 45 years. It's been within the last 8 years since we have started this program of this playground that what we have seen is that the ranchers no longer are comfortable with their leases on the crown with BLM for their cattle. That was a traditional use, and it did not interfere with the wildlife. What we're doing now has a huge impact on the wildlife up there. In the last 8 years, what I see in the hayfields behind my place and also my hayfields is I see upwards of 200, 250 elk in the mornings, in the spring and in the fall, coming down into the Emma area. I myself have had to free 2 newborn elk from my own fencing in Emma, and we had to destroy them, with the Department of Wildlife. We're being very, very foolish in not paying attention to the impact on the wildlife on the crown. I know that when they opened up Glacier, they put in the May 15th opening, but on the top of the crown, where what you're discussing now for Prince Creek, you don't have this agreement with BLM, and consequently, that is open year-round. And the pressure that you're putting up there, I'm sorry, it's ridiculous. You need to find somewhere else to mountain bike. You need to find somewhere else to cross-country ski in the wintertime. This is not the place. And it's not too late to stop and think about this and reverse what you're doing. We all know we had problems with the mountain lions summer before last on the Rio Grande Trail. We probably lost several females that used to have dens up there as a result of the traffic. May 15th wasn't enough. Remember, we had to close that trail for a couple more weeks last year. If you don't think that on the other side of the Crown those animals aren't being affected, then you need to really go up there and look at what's going on. Just stand up there at the Crown and count how many people are going by on bicycles, just whizzing by, and how many people are going up there with dogs off leash. And I ride up there now just because I'm stubborn, okay? But it's become a mountain bike playground. And I know that the people on Prince Creek have spoken out. They've spoken out quite loud and clear about a month ago. You need to listen to them. You shouldn't pass this now. You need to solve the problems. You need to move something so that you can control the number of people that use this area. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. Anybody else we should make a public comment? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment. And we've got a good 15 minutes or so for board discussion, comments. And so, Wayne, how do you want to do that?
I'll just open it up to the board for their comments on the final plan. Howie?
Well, I'm going to ask a procedural question, and it's really to Gary and Jesse, as to what you're requesting. As to what you're requesting of the OST board today. In the text, I read that you, or my impression is, or understanding is, you want us to approve the trail construction, but defer on parking action. Can you clarify that so that we can sort of focus our discussion in these 15 minutes?
Well, it's not focusing. This is an overall plan. So in the plan, there's an action item to build the trail this year. And in the action item for parking, it's to bring back a full baked plan with budget this fall so the public, BOCC, and Open Space Board can review that. So overall, the plan is here for adoption, and action items come at different points. It's just like every other management plan that has action items that come, the first action item is the trail. The trail, we have seen through a lot of the public process, is not the main consternation. It's this parking that is the main consternation, and we want to work with, our road and bridge department on the road to figure out the road issues and the traffic. We want to work with, with the BLM to see where they're going to go with their piece, but we're going to size this parking lot, come up with a design, come up with a cost, so you guys all can see that. But this plan overall has all these action items in it. So what we're looking today is to adopt the overall management plan.
So staying on the point about road and bridge, I know you've had conversations with them to manage the sightline issues, road crossing issues, speed control, whatever. Have they budgeted dollars for this project going forward?
Well, that's that's why we're going to design this parking area with the speed tables and everything else, is because we want to be able to bring back a full package to Open Space Board and BOCC on road improvements, trailhead, and everything will come back to give you the final approval, so we could hopefully solve this next spring. So we will have that. You will have that discussion, during the budget, overall 2018 budget. So yes, we are in discussions with them. This is not a final on the parking area. That final will come during the budget of 2018.
Okay, thanks.
Can I pick up on Howie's?
Mike. Yes, Mike.
It's not turned on, I don't think, on the backside.
Sounds like it.
Sounds like
it.
Okay, it is. Okay.
Maybe the battery is low.
Okay.
You're
There
good
we
now.
Speak up.
You're good.
Just to be clear, adoption of this plan today, which is what it says right on the bottom of the first page, is what the action you're asking open space to take today, does not commit to the location of the parking. The action item there is to look at alternatives, one of which is the bullpen, but not the only, right?
Correct.
And so implementation of that action, where might parking ultimately end up, is a process also public. It'll play out at least until budget season in the fall, maybe beyond, right?
Correct.
So adopting this does commit to the trail segment. You have a phase 1 and phase 2, phase 1 being the longer one there where the icons are, right?
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to make sure we're all on the same page.
Graham.
A few comments. In all the many public comments that we had, many of them have to do with the speed of bikes, speed of cars, speed of all kinds of things. And so I would just urge us in this, in implementing this management plan, to consider speed bumps, signs, radar signs, trail design, enforcement. But speed seems to be a really big issue up here that I think we need to deal with. There's a very slight mention of winter use up here, but I think we need to explore that a little bit more. Is this a cross-country skier area? Are there winter mountaineers who go up Sopris and need parking? Fat bikes, things like that. I'm not proposing that we introduce or encourage these uses, but I think we need to study them and accommodate them in some way or another. The management plan does have flexibility on parking. I would urge that we consider multiple smaller areas that I think would be more in keeping scale-wise with that area, and also accommodate more different users. Some people can ride all the way from Carbondale to the top, and other people can't. So I think we should keep ourselves open, not to one main parking area, but work with BLM at the top, look hard at the bullpen, and also down at the high school or whatever. I hope we will honor our biodiversity pledge in dealing with wildlife issues up here. In terms of the trail, I think we should be open to some users being on the road, maybe uphill bikers or something like that on the side of the road, because there is going to be a lot of different traffic on this. Certainly there'll be bikes coming down pretty quickly. You know, part of this is we don't have control over all the BLM. We didn't create the mountain bike trails up there, and we can work with them, but there's not a lot we can do to control that whole area. And I don't think this problem of recreation up there is our doing. I think with this management plan, we're helping to solve that, and I hope we do work with the BLM closely to do that. So I support this management plan as a good way to deal with an existing problem and to move forward, and I think there's a lot of things in here that will improve the situation. So.
Graham, I'm just going to tag on to some of Graham's comments, because we need to go back to how this came about. Pickens County was a cooperating agency with the BLM for several years as the BLM was updating their travel management plan. And Pickens County was at the table, I was at the table with staff, and we consistently tried to encourage and actually oppose the designation of an SRA for this area, just for all the reasons that have been stated. We were unsuccessful. So, given that, the BLM really did not have a management plan. They did not or do not have staff for enforcement. And for Pickens County, I think to step up to try to address this problem from parking to wildlife to trail use, I think we should be very, very grateful for Pickens County for stepping up and trying to address all these issues that are going to continue without any really strong support from the BLM at this point. We're hoping that we will be able to form a better relationship with the BLM for this particular property. I think that's already happening with signages, and I think that can continue to happen when we look at winter closures, wildlife concerns, and enforcement. But I think we really need to credit the Open Space and Trails staff and trustees for taking this upon yourselves to try to address a problem, as Graham said, that is not within our jurisdiction. This is public lands. This is federal lands. And this management plan and our ability to work more closely, and I think the BLM is certainly welcoming us as a partner because they know they haven't got the resources, I think will overall be a better amenity for everybody.
Rachel.
Thank you. George, your thoughts are kind of mirroring my own on this, and I'll just kind of put them out there. Similar to asking for a MOU with the BLM, another approach might be to pursue an amendment to their management plan or amendment to their special use designation with additional restrictions as necessary for winter closures. And perhaps it's really just asking them to amend it that they will defer to Colorado Parks and Wildlife on wildlife management decisions on this area related to potential closures at the appropriate times of year. But I think we need to move forward with that. We did go through a very lengthy process, and we tried to really impress on the BLM what we thought the hazards were of opening this up as a larger recreation area, including open houses in Basalt and discussions and meetings down there. But it didn't seem to make much of a difference. And we deal with this all the time with the federal agencies having a mandate to pursue multiple use. And you're constantly in conversations with them and with others to say, well, multiple use doesn't mean the same 10 angels are going to dance on the head of the same pin at the same time. That, multiple use just means having those activities spread throughout a forest area or an area so that everyone's accommodated without literally stepping on top of each other. So I think that might be something to consider adding to the plan, is to continue to pursue that sort of turnover of control for winter management, for wildlife considerations. And I think given the continuing cutback on federal funding for those agencies, it might be something that they welcome or that they're open to. But again, I would come back to this is federal land and BLM made the designation. We clearly have the same issues up in the Lanedo area where they've designated in the travel management plan as a snowmobile area, and yet there's no parking other than on the county road. And so we kind of get stuck with some of those things. It's the blessing and curse of being surrounded by public lands. The other thing I guess I would like to have discussed a little bit more is should there be horse trailer parking at the bullpen parking lot. I think a lot of good arguments have been made there, but I think that what would necessarily go hand in hand with that is designating in some way that these lower trails, which were discussed, are for horses only, and that the upper trails are for mountain bikes only, because otherwise you're going to have both users on both trails and sets, and no one's going to be happy. No one's going to be satisfied, and we'll have that continual conflict. So there needs to perhaps be a discussion in the document about conflicts between user groups and how to potentially avoid those. There has been a lot of effort made to open the area to the horse folks from the glacier side. I think that it may be appropriate to consider that as the primary access, but that doesn't mean that if there's already existing lower trails and, because I'm thinking about speed bumps, I'm not sure you're going to take a horse trailer over speed bumps, or that would be an objection to those who have traffic calming measures along the road. But we have a larger parcel, and I think that we could work with a design that could accommodate that and get those off the road at that point as well. And then again, designate if there's lower trails or existing trails and trail easements that the Horse Council has, to designate those as horse only, and to try to move forward with the upper trails, really letting people know that these are they're not trimming the trees back, and it's low riding, and we'll move that way. So I'd like to look at those two items. Thank you.
So, Wayne, we're at 1 o'clock here. We need to wrap this up. It's really in your hands in terms of falls under your purview as the Open Space and Board trustees to approve or whatever you want to do with the draft plan.
Okay, I guess it would. I'd entertain a motion if we want to approve at this time. I had a few comments too, but I'll hold mine, I guess, and relay them to staff.
Or approve with amendments.
Wayne,
basically,
you're in an awkward position. We never really, as a board, had this kind of discussion, that we're having right now to make a recommendation to the BOCC.
We don't have to make a recommendation to the BOC. It's our purview to adopt this plan, or not, or we can continue it till the next meeting.
Can I address that? One of the things is, this is why we, bringing it to the joint session. I think what Rachel's brought up is there's been confusion in the public comment about the trails in the middle. They're not there. They're in a totally different spot. So, overall, this management plan was trying to solve an issue that's currently in this area. And so the trail issue is a safety issue for the roads. There are no trails where those icons are. That is Tie Bar Ranch, and Tie Bar Ranch does not have trails. That's way up on the crown, and that's a different area. So, to me, the way we usually do this is the Open Space and Trails Board approves the management plan. Extra budget items will go back to the Open Space and Trails Board for a recommendation to the BOCC. So in this instance, approving this plan basically sets forth on the trail portion. The parking portion will come back. In the parking portion, you can have further discussions about what's in the parking and everything else, but that will come back. So the trail piece, right now, this is a heavily used mountain bike area and hiking area, and introducing a lot of horses into an area that does not currently have horses on these lower trails will create enormous conflicts. And we would need to really have a bigger discussion about what we need to do there. However, the parking area is not settled. So, to me, this management plan has gone through a public process. There's been a lot of public comment. You should take into account all of that public comment too. And, we're looking to try to get this trail issue solved, and we could solve the trail piece this year. So it's up to you guys, but we can do that.
That's the way I see the plan. Is the main action item is starting on this trail system on the lower part of the road, and I think it's wise to kick the can down the road on the parking issue. And I would also encourage the public to be involved in the BLM's process when they go through their NEPA process on this, because that's your other opportunity to weigh in on that. So again, I'll entertain a motion, or we can move to further the discussion until the next meeting. Graham.
I think there's enough flexibility in this plan to deal with a lot of these issues. The horse issue is a tough one, and I kind of agree with Gary. In a narrow corridor like this, it's going to be very difficult. And I'm wondering if from the West Cypress Creek side, that can't be looked on as the access, the equestrian access and parking from that side, because to my knowledge, the horse trails are up top, and they're not in the Prince Creek corridor, at least right now, unless we put them in there. And that would create, I think, a lot of complexity. So anyway, I would go ahead and make the motion to approve the management plan.
Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion with a request that Rachel suggested, which I think is a very good suggestion. And I know I used to be Rita's neighbor, and I know Rita's 44 years. Lots has changed, but I think we did a very good job on the Glacier side of working with the mountain bike and the horse user groups. I think people, including Leslie and Holly and probably Rita, are pleased with how that's working this summer. I think it's extraordinary. And so I think we should move this along. I think it's ready so that we can take the next step on the trail segment, which we own, and which we can start on if we approve this today. But I think the sign that's in our packet, the sign that you did with the mountain bike group, I just think that's an example of the two user groups working very well together, that sign. I would urge the two user groups to work together, because I have used the upper access 50 times in my life, especially when I lived in Emma for 4 years and kept horses at Sopris Mountain Ranch. And it's a terrific place to ride. Yes, it's steep, but I have mountain horses, and mountain horses can go up steep places. It's a terrific area to ride. And I think if the two groups work together, what Graham just said may be true, or maybe in the lower area, the groups voluntarily could have some horse-only trails, but that isn't fully baked as of today. But I would urge the two groups to work together, and if there can be some horse-only trails accessed by start out with maybe 2 horse trailers and wherever the parking is, or create a horse trailer only parking nodule that can access the lower trails. Great, that's 3 accesses for horses, but there's 2 already. And so I don't think we should not move this along, and so that's why I second the motion.
Okay, I'll call this
Discussion
Okay.
after the second.
We're really running out of.
Well, you know, the Prince Creek Trail calls for horses. So that's the section we're talking about, right? That has, as in your text, bikers, pedestrians, equestrians. Okay, so the design's going to accommodate it.
The design is going to be the same flavor as the trails above. So yes, it's going to accommodate, but it's not going to be, this is just like the BLM. We're trying to do a sister agency where this is not the area where we're recommending to put a lot of horses due to the conflicts between bikers and hikers. Unlike Glacier, we created a completely separate system.
Well, my comment is, thanks for clarifying that. If we are approaching this, that the parking situation is not a commitment, but to be researched and studied, I can support this. I really think that BLM has created a nightmare, a management problem for everybody else, and they're not stepping up to take care of what the responsibilities they have. And if we do such a great job in the parking, there's no incentive for the BLM to manage the problems they've created. So I do not see that adopting this management plan obligates us to create parking or a parking profile that solves the BLM problems.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, with that, I'll call the question. All those in favor of approving this plan?
Aye.
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 Okay.
Out loud.
Aye.
Aye.
Sorry.
All right.
Thank you.
The plan
And
is
we're going to
approved.
incorporate
We can move
Rachel's.
forward with the trail system, and the parking issue will be brought before the public and us again.
Yes, you will get that again. Thank you.
Thank you all. That concludes our joint meeting with Open Space and Trails. We will move on with our regular work session agenda items.
So do you want to?
So we can keep this up while we're all breaking, just so everyone can see the Carbondale to Crested Butte?
No.
So,
Okay.
Feel free to come back and work session or
we could do that, George.
Okay, we're on to our citizen board interview. This is Christoph Eichelberger. Thank you for coming, and you're applying for the Board of Adjustment. Great. Well, welcome, and why don't you just let us know why you're interested in serving on the Board of Adjustment and what you think you might bring to that board.
Yeah, so I'm an architect here in town. I was practiced over on Main Street, and I've gone to the board for issues that we've had on other sites, and it's interesting to me.
Hold on one sec. They didn't turn you. Start again.
Okay.
No, that's all right. Keep on going.
So as I said, I'm an architect in town, and having gone to the board for an adjustment that we had over on Red Mountain, having that interaction with the community, understanding what's going on, and understanding the issues with the topographic or site-specific issues that end up coming up, and being able to help address those in a community sense on the board has an interest to me. So again, I'm being able to see what's coming through and what's happening within the community, and also hearing from both the community in regards to these adjustments, and then also from the owners.
Oh, thanks. Other questions? Rachel?
Thank you again for applying, and this is kind of a standard question I ask. But there's a lot of conflict at times with this board.
Correct.
Where how comfortable are you with pressure and saying no? That no, I'm sorry, you're asking for 15 pounds in a 10-pound bag, and not going to make that adjustment to make that happen.
Well, I mean, I think it's very important to obviously be looking at the community and the people that are being affected by that adjustment or that that variation to the zoning. It's beyond the community. You're also looking at the environmental impacts, and then coming back in terms of what is best suited for that site. And so, I'm constantly battling those elements with all of our sites here within both the county and within Aspen, and outside of the county over in Eagle and so on and so forth. So I think it's as a board member, my duty is to the community before looking at an owner or a relationship with an owner that I may know, or the site. I think our job is to go through and take a look at the decisions that weren't able to be made within by an administrative person, and as it comes back into that board, is to say, well, is this really a hardship or is it not a hardship? And I think that's what's extremely important to understand. And there are instances in both the county and the city and other jurisdictions that I end up working in where the language of the code is not consistent. So you may find a situation in terms of the way that language was written, it worked for 95% of the situations, but there are those lots and those sites where there needs to be changes within the way you look at the setbacks or in terms of height variances and stuff like that.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's fair to say that we understand there can be hardships at times, and you put it very well in terms of the 95%. And it's that determination, I think, that needs to be made. Is this a true hardship, or is this maximizing value on what are often marginal lots? And we're seeing more and more marginal odd lots or in odd places kind of come through because of the development pressures we have within our community. And so that was kind of a long answer, but it sounds like you're okay handling pressure along those lines, and you're comfortable saying no to people who may be colleagues or associates.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Patty?
This is another pretty standard question. Joanna, how often does this board meet?
It meets once a month as necessary.
So I'm hoping that you have availability for that once a month as necessary board meeting?
Yeah, I'm fairly flexible with my schedules, and I obviously live here in Aspen or in Woody Creek, so I'm available.
Not too far away.
Yeah, I'm not too far away.
Great. I think it would be great to have you on board.
Steve?
Hi, thanks for applying for this. I have one simple question. Have you ever had a client who made an appeal to the Board of Adjustment?
Yes.
And how did that turn out? Were you involved in their presentation to the board, or?
Yes, I was involved with the presentation to the board, and that sort of drove my interest. We had an initial board meeting, which had to be canceled due to not having enough members being able to be available. And then the second one was successful in terms of that particular hardship. So.
Okay. And do you think that would in any way prejudice you in how you would make a decision on the board?
No. Again, looking at the site and what we were asking at the time, was a realistic and I think very well balanced solution. And I think when you look at historically with the way in which that particular reading of the code was, I think that decision was in line with what I see, what I would have determined in the end. And that instance has come up on another project that I've worked with Joanne on. And in that other instance, we did not go in and ask for that. So, I think, again, it goes into a site-specific situation. So.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
Joanne, according to as I read the membership requirements, it says 3 to 5 members, not more than half may be members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Article 3 of the Home Rule Charter provides for membership of 5 regular and up to 5 alternate members. So we already have, it looks like 5 regulars. So would Christoph be filling an alternate position?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. You didn't really specify that.
Okay.
Any other questions? Greg?
Just briefly, thanks for coming in. I really appreciate you applying. It's good to see people stepping up, and I appreciate that. I was just looking at the online form, perhaps. There's something that says length of residency in Pitkin County. It says 6 months, but then it says you grew up here since the age of 4.
Yeah, so we moved here back in the mid to late 70s. I grew up in Snowmass Village. I went to Aspen Country Day, Aspen Middle School, the community school, and then my mother, who was living out here, sold in 1999. And then at that point, I'd gone to RISD. I'd gone, pretty much lived and did my career all over the place. And then finally, we started working back out here in 2009 over on Double Bar X Ranch, along with another project in McLean Flats. And as our office grew and our project mass grew out here, and I have a daughter, so wanting her to be out here, most importantly, we made the transition about 6 months ago to move out here and bought a place in Woody Creek, which we're remodeling right now. And
Got it. That was the second half of my question was, what motivated you to come back?
Yeah, so it was really, again, my 4-year-old daughter's, I think this is the best place to grow up and also to come back to a community that I understand really well is very important. So.
Great.
Thanks.
Joanne, do we have any other applicants as far as you know?
We do not at this time,
Okay.
but we still would like to fill the second alternate position.
Yeah, because again, it looks like you're allowed up to 5 alternates, so we have plenty of opportunity. So thank you very much. We should be able to get back to you in short order.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, John, let's move on to future agendas.
Yeah, and before I dive into these, just so the board knows, I was watching the trajectory of the open space meeting, I did waive the airport update off to another time. So we don't have that time pressure on us, and so we may actually be ahead now.
That's always good.
Yeah. So a couple changes and items for future agendas for you. We had scheduled a time for the Aspen Mobility Lab. That was at the request of city staff. We haven't had a lot of opportunity for staffs to get coordinated on that project, and we think it may be more appropriate for an EOTC meeting. So we're going to be meeting with city staff first week in August on that, and kind of game planning from there. So you'll see that coming off of future agendas until we figure out, is that really an EOTC discussion? Is it something that needs to come back to just you guys? It seemed to kind of follow on from the last EOTC discussion where the city had said that they had a new project that they wanted to, we're going to be announcing. So more to come on that. On August 23rd, the executive director of the state broadband office will be coming to Pickens County. This is a new position that was appointed by the governor in March. And let's see, I've got his name here. Tony Neal Graves is the executive director. He is going to be visiting with representatives from the Department of Local Affairs and State Office of Information Technology to come and look at our project. He was hoping to get time either with the board or with a board member and staff to spend about a half hour talking about Pickens County's initiatives. He's going to be here at 11. That's a regular meeting day. That's a Wednesday. And so we have the option, I guess, of either, identifying a board member or two that would like to be part of maybe meeting with this group as staff, or if the board would prefer, we could start the meeting early, our regular meeting early at 11, and have Mr. Neal Graves come in, and we could do a staff presentation, have a conversation with him and the whole board. We just weren't sure. Either one works from staff's perspective, but we wanted to put that option in front of you guys.
I'd like to have the whole board, but...
Other thoughts, Rachel?
Well, I could see starting the Wednesday with a 1-hour work session and then still have our regular meeting start at noon. I think that's what you're describing. But if I don't want to start the meeting early and have public comment at 11 and have folks miss that who are planning on it at noon.
Yeah, we could schedule that either way. It
I'm fine with that.
I just wasn't sure. We just wanted to do a check-in if there was energy for the whole board to be part of that meeting or not.
Other comments?
I'd be interested in hearing, certainly.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we go ahead and post it as a work session item, and we'll start his tour up here, and we'll have members from DOLA and our staff. We'll go ahead and prepare a brief presentation on our project, and I think he'll want to hear from the board's perspective why this is important and how the state dollars are helpful and those sorts of things.
Oh, that sounds good.
Okay. Let's see. And I can probably save this one could either go under open discussion or future agendas, but I guess in the spirit that it would result in a resolution. We're preparing the resolution on the Citizen Grant Review Committee youth applicants. What we did not have a discussion on, though, was whether we wanted to appoint alternate members now to the library board. We had gone through the process of adjusting the library's bylaws to create 2 alternate positions. I think you guys, we had a number of good candidates. There were 2 in particular, and unfortunately do not have their names right in front of me right now. But we probably need to bring that conversation back to see if you wanted to appoint one or both of those candidates or offer them alternate positions.
Yeah, can we, for next Tuesday, can we have those other applicants? so we refresh our memories.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, so it would be all the applicants who've applied and
Just their applications in front of us.
just
we
their
can discuss
applications
it.
so we can discuss, sure.
Right, yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Great.
That's all I have on future agenda.
Okay, Patty?
I have one question. On the August 24th school board meeting, it's my understanding that Rachel and George won't be here. It'll just be the three of us. Is that correct?
I believe that is correct.
It's not noted on them.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming it's at the school.
We'll be doing that at
So
the school,
you'll give
yeah.
me some more info on that before we move forward?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Patty, that's a great thought because I think you should communicate, John, with the school board and let them know that because of other conflicts, there will only be three of us and see if they still want us on that meeting or they'd like a future meeting with a full board.
And let them know which three.
Yeah.
That may be of concern to them.
Well, I would suggest you move forward.
But if they don't want to, it's up to them. I'm planning to go.
It's so hard to coordinate meetings anyway that I would, you could let them know, but.
Yeah, I agree. It's not like we're asking to cancel, but sometimes
Give
I
them
don't
a
want
heads up.
them to be disappointed and think, well, they were meeting at the full board and they're not, and,
But
you
who
know,
knows if they'll even
it's
have a
better to
full
at least
board.
give them the heads up.
Yeah, that's fine. That's a good point. Okay, anybody else have anything on future agendas?
That's all I had.
Okay, so we have caught up, which is great. Rich and Dave will be here at 1:45.
Yeah, they are on their way.
Okay, we could take a break or we can do a little open discussion. What was the board's pleasure?
I'd say do some open discussion.
Okay, John?
Okay. The one item I wanted to talk to you about today is you've probably been seeing some emails about two-factor authentication and training on that. And it's a security protocol that the county is looking to adopt, particularly since the beginning of the year. There have been a number, you've seen them in the news, a number of ransomware attacks and encrypting of data and those sorts of things. And so we've been looking at best practices to continue to enhance. We feel like we have secure networks, but more and more the occurrence of these cyber attacks on local governments as well as private entities has been increased. I saw one statistic that from 2016 to 2017, the occurrence of these attacks has gone up 50%. And so two-factor authentication is a security protocol to better secure our networks. And basically, we all experience it in our lives right now. If you have an ATM card, you've got two-factor authentication. You've got an ATM card, that's one factor, and then you have a PIN number that is the second factor. And so how that translates into computers, we tend to have a static password. Those have increasingly become vulnerable, and so what we'd be introducing is a second factor, and that second factor is a PIN number that basically changes on a 24-hour basis. And so how it works, though, is it gets texted to you on your mobile device, and that's the training. So if you have a mobile phone
Every 24
that,
hours?
every day you would be logging in.
Confused already.
You don't have to remember a second password. What you'll get is a new authentication factor texted to you on your phone when you do your initial login, and then that lasts for 24 hours. And what it does is it has a constantly rotating second factor then that makes it very difficult for our networks to be penetrated. Now, obviously, it's not for all attacks, but it does provide a very, very high level of security for access on attacks that rely on your password, or if you've given your password out accidentally through a phishing attack, you get an email that says, hey, I'm from the Pickens County Help Desk. We're installing this software. We need your address, or we need your password. Sometimes people do these things, put it in. If they don't have that second factor, which is the PIN, that phishing attack does not work. So that, we've heard a lot from the board about concern on the security of our data. There are a number of examples of counties across the nation and municipalities across the nation that have fallen victim to these ransomware attacks. This is one, not the only, but it's one of the best practices in terms of securing the networks. And so what we're looking is to the greatest degree possible to get everyone on this two-factor authentication. I'm getting trained on it on Friday, and we'd like to be able to set up times for the board to also be trained on that and to learn how to use your mobile device for that access.
I don't think we have any choice in this matter.
Not if you want to get your email.
Thank you.
No, it is up to you guys, but I would strongly encourage
So my
that.
question is, if I get my email on my phone and my computer, how do I get into my phone to get my new rotating numbers to get into my...
We've asked those questions, and there's a way to do it, but somebody more experienced than me is going to have to answer
So
the
my
question when
question
they
is
train
not
you.
stupid,
No,
it's just a
it's
question
been
that
asked.
you
We
can't answer.
we had the same questions when we were talking about this at the staff level. So,
Rachel?
Yeah, just so I understand, right now we're meeting in the library, we're all hooking up to the library Wi-Fi system, and then getting our email or whatever while we're here. Are you saying that you'd need an authentication number to get onto the library system in the future?
It's just to get
or
into your own
Picken County-
system.
to get into the county's networks, which are more and more, as you're pointing out, you can access those over the internet.
Right.
And I might not be using the right term of art, but you have virtual private networks and sign-in. So when you log in to the county network to get your email, type in your password. You'll also now be asked for an authentication number.
Okay. Well, this, again, just so that the IT department can think through all the scenarios, I pretty much get my county email bounced to my personal computer. And so I'm really not logging in on my county.
So you'll be, I do the same thing where I access Google, for example, at home, and this will also provide, you'll be able to, you still have to use your network logon to access Google. We have that single sign-in, and so the single sign-in will now be accompanied. So even when you log on to Google from your home computer, you'll have that opportunity to...
Whatever we need to do for the security, I think that that's critically important. But I think that we need to maybe make sure we have some real solid training time set up for
is it going to be one-on-one?
I'm told, I know Rich has gone through it. I go through it on Friday, and I've been told it's very intuitive at this point.
What does that mean?
It will be, there will be a convenience factor. Obviously, one password is easier than having the two factors, but I think there's been a lot of effort put in by having it on the mobile device, and a mobile device that we all carry anyway, practically becoming part of us, near as I can tell, to make it as easy as possible.
Yeah, and also if you don't have a mobile device, which we've ran into with others in the organization, they can get fobs that they can carry. So there's different ways of making this work. But John's absolutely right. It really is about just protecting us. And as you all know, in fact, I think it came up at the last board meeting. I was here that we were talking about a cyber attack. We're just doing all we can do to try to prevent those. So you will get, John wanted to introduce this personally, and then we'll have Nate follow up with an email and try to set up some times to sit down with you and spend as much time as you need to with Nate in the training. We'll make him available. He'll come wherever you guys need him to go and really help you work through this, because it's an organizational change. We've got over 200 employees and elected officials that are all having to deal with what we're planning on making this move with. So.
And that kind of highlights the challenge, because it only takes one of those 200 to, maybe give their password or, fall victim to one of these, and it can open the whole system up. And so that's why we've heard every time we've talked about cloud-based applications with the board, the concerns over security have come up, and we've been listening to that.
All right, great. So we'll come back to open discussion. As long as we have staff here now, we'll do the building project updates.
Okay.
we'll need a second to pull this up, if you don't mind. And we're going to go through the update itself, and then we also have a couple of additions that we want to talk to you about. Oh, I'm sorry, Rich Engelhardt, Chief Operations Officer.
Dave Detweiler, your project manager.
And then we also have Jody.
Just to let the board know, I want to thank you guys for your efforts. I was contacted by the Homeowners Association at Twin Ridge about the ambulance district, and it's my understanding we're going to try and work something out that one or two or whatever can attend their upcoming Homeowners Association board meeting. I just wanted the board to know that.
Great.
So they're working on it. Thanks.
We also have Jody Smith here. Because we're going to be talking also about, we want to get your thoughts on the dais, a little bit more input on that, and then also thought we'd have a little discussion about the naming of the building for you all. So a couple of different items because signage is starting to come up. So dialogue, how's that?
Right, we're not going to decide it here at this table.
My bad. I've got to remember to separate those two. So. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and have Dave go ahead and start, and we'll do the update first for you.
Okay, so progress on the site. If you go over there, you'll see there's lots of really tall concrete walls right now. We've poured the wall that faces the courthouse and the plaza by the Sally Port. You can see that's where that old wood rail used to be. This wall now extends about 4 feet up above the grade. We've also now poured the wall that faces Veterans Park. There's the plaza building in the back. So that wall is now done. So you can see now we've created 3 sides of the box. This other wall has been done for a while. And we've also started the framing for the new skin and creating the new window openings for our new highly insulated windows. Down in the basement level, we've cut up the slab and installed all the new plumbing we needed and some electric for that lower level, and have since gone back and re-poured that concrete with the new plumbing in place. And that's our view from up on the roof of the plaza building. You can see as far as concrete walls, we've got this last little stretch around the corner along the jail to pour. And then we're starting to get ready our prep for our slab pour here. And then as we move forward, you're going to start seeing steel coming up next month. This 7th date is about 2 weeks ahead from their original schedule for steel, so that's good. It may slide a day or two from that date, but we're still ahead of schedule, which was great. We'll top out that steel in October, be dried in January, start furniture in May, and then come June we'll be ready to rock and roll.
I might mention we just left the construction meeting, and I used to recall that the steel top out was a big deal in the construction world. You know, they would always celebrate.
Flag the flag.
Yeah. I think things have changed over time, and they had indicated that it's something that if we want to do a bigger celebration about it, that's fine. If not, they just kind of go on their way, and they do a major celebration at the end. So is there any preference on that, I guess, from the board's perspective of this topping out, is having a celebration? Does it?
Can we still fly a flag?
There,
kind of tradition, isn't
there
it?
are, yeah, a lot of traditions have gone away. Used to,
I like tradition.
Kegs used to be a tradition too at the topping out party, but we stopped a few years ago. So yeah, we can do whatever we want symbolically for that last piece of steel. Is typically what you do it on. You tie the flag to the last piece of steel and bring it up and set it. Usually, if you're going to do that, you want to kind of have some folks there to see it because it is a neat thing to see. If not, as Rich said, more often than not these days, we're just putting our head down and going.
Steve?
I don't really need to have a ceremony, but if somewhere along that stretch we could have another site visit, hard hat site visit.
Okay.
That could be a good time to see.
You bet.
See where it is at that point.
I like the idea of having a flag rising and we can just be there if who's ever around. I think that's fun. My question is, will we have all that steel delivered by that date?
Ooh, so that's
the bridge. The bridge.
We are fully aware of the bridge. Not thrilled about it, but
well, you're not the only one. So.
So I'm actually working in partnership with Tom Newland, who's the PR guy for that. So I'm very up to speed with what he's doing. It's just something we're all just going to have to deal with. Yes, that has been taken into account in our schedule the best that we can, and we'll just
don't bring it over the pass.
No.
Little short trucks. We'll bring it over in little short trucks. We'll
Okay,
cut it
great,
all in
Rachel.
half.
Yeah, well, two things. One, is there any opportunity to bring some of the steel or more of the steel up before the date? Or is it still being fabricated that we might be able to store it at the Buttermilk parking lot or something like that?
I will discuss that option again. We certainly have discussed that in the past. Obviously, on site, our storage is next to nothing. We do have a little bit of area along the side of the driveway. So I'll chat with the team if that's an option. I'll coordinate with John and we'll see
sure.
if that
I just thought it'd be
can
worth
work for short
taking a
term.
look at. And then back to the flag and the steel top out, you know, I think it'd be great to be able to have brownies and cookies or something like that for the crew. A lot of it is more about the crew's hard work, making a deadline, and it doesn't have to be a big deal. But, you know, I'd like to say, hey, thank you for your hard work. We appreciate it, and, you know, have something to share with the workers there. Whether it's cookies or pizza,
Donuts.
I'll let you guys decide that, you know.
They probably would rather have beer, but.
I know, but that's,
Pizza and
we
beer.
can't buy beer with public dollars, so, you know, but, you know, midday, a little bit of a brownie fix wouldn't be a bad idea.
I'm sure they would appreciate that.
With the
All
flag.
right, good.
With the flag. Yeah.
Okay.
Will do.
Thank you.
Budget-wise, again, we're still holding. We did get some good news from our contractor that they're feeling confident in their contingency and that we should expect some of their contingency to come back to us. So I am projecting right now that we would have a little bit of contingency left to play with. We're still shaking out some of the furniture costs. That's still being worked on for bidding. We've got an abatement conversation that I think you guys are aware of that's ongoing in terms of what that final cost will be. And we always are continuing to look at ways that we can save money. Just last week, we found a $50,000 savings in an item of just kind of re-engineering something. So it's something that's an ongoing dialogue for us, but we're looking good.
When you mentioned the bidding on the furniture packet, will that be open to the whole community, or when does that bid go out? How does that happen?
Jerry's looking at Jody.
That's a good segue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't forget your mic.
Jody Smith. Yes, we are creating a bid packet, and it will go out state nationwide to all of the firms. And we have the visioning team who will be the selection committee on that, and of course us. And then we'll make a recommendation on the vendor. So it is a public process, and we'll see what happens.
How large a general contract do you think that's going to be to outfit these two buildings?
We're looking at,
Ballpark, you know.
It's about an $800,000. That's what we have budgeted right now. So
It's pretty big.
Pretty big. Great. I think there'll be a lot of interest.
yes.
We hope so. That always helps with pricing.
And just to clarify, as part of that RFP process, there is kind of a minimum quality sort of component that
Oh, of course.
you know, you can't have a Walmart pick up the box. Not to pick on Walmart because they're a great company, but you can't
Oh, sure. Yeah.
provide that sort of thing. So when we say it's open to anybody, it is open to anybody, but they have
Who
to
can
have
meet that
a
standard.
product that meets kind of that minimum standard, which again, we've kind of
Oh, sure.
it's a middle of the road sort of thing. It's not a top end, but it's not a piece of junk either.
We want a little durability there.
Exactly.
Thanks.
Okay, we're going to talk to you a little bit about the dais, and again, we have taken your lead on this. Is that we started out with the fact that we were going to try to keep it stationary. Again, I think it made great sense, your decision to do that based on what you have in front of you here, and how that would clean things up. So this is a drawing originally set up, and this is an opportunity. And as you can see off to the lower right hand or middle right hand, Your own John Peacock kind of came up with this design.
It looks like a peacock.
So, and I'm going to let John talk to this since he originated this, but just to give you a little background, this is kind of a multi-use opportunity here. Jody did take this scenario to the visioning team and had some discussions about that, and just generally from a staff's perspective what this room would look like. But we're wanting to hear your input now and kind of get your thoughts on this. So John, if you don't mind, do you want to talk about kind of your rationale behind this?
It's so embarrassing to have my name on this.
Designed by John.
Yeah, we are making sure that the world knows this.
Yeah.
I think you should patent this.
I may have missed a calling here, but basically what we were trying to do is think about how we could incorporate a lot of the comments that we heard from the board over the many meetings where we were talking about the building. And some of the things that stuck out was we wanted permanent wiring, so we didn't have the technical challenges ongoing, but we also wanted some flexibility in terms of having something that felt like a Diaz with a presenter's table and a table for the board. But there's also a desire to feel like you're sitting at the same table with the public or the applicants, and also a desire to have a table that you could maybe put a lot of folks around if you just wanted to have a meeting. And so basically what we did was designed initially a round table with one movable point that could be pulled back into a presenter's table, but the dimensions of that presenter's table would have everyone much closer even than we are here right now. This is a deep space. This would shallow out the space so that everyone's sitting a little bit closer together at the same level. The movable portion could be permanently wired, though. The wire harness could move with the table, so you're never disconnecting that piece of furniture for microphones, that sort of thing. The wiring can stay static. But it gives you a few different setup options. If you wanted to put 3 boards around this table, even in a circular fashion, or 3 boards and some of their staff, we think you'd be able to do that with the dimensions that we're talking about. And because it's shallow, it also allows the opportunity, with just the loss of 1 or 2, maybe 2 to 4 seats, of a speaker's podium like this to be set up behind the presenter's table, so that if you have a group, whether it be staff or in the case of a land use applicant presenting and you're inviting public comment, instead of having everyone shift around the table, you can have somebody come up to a podium.
Rather than directly behind.
And the podium and the dimensions are a little challenging there, but we could figure out where to move that podium. But the idea would be to have the option of a podium for those larger hearings. This would be a pretty unique piece of furniture.
Custom built.
And it would have to be custom built for the hearing room. That's something that Jody's been exploring and can probably talk about a little bit better. But in terms of those interests of having it permanently stationed, but still maintaining the intimate feel of being at the table with applicants or with the public, and the ability to create maybe a round table experience for those meetings where maybe you're bringing multiple boards together. We thought this was our best option to meet all those needs. And that's not just because I designed it.
I think that's kind of what we were looking at. So we could close the table if we needed to, and what better way to do than make it a movable feast kind of a thing. I think the podium, it makes sense to have it to one side or the other, because you wouldn't want it to be right behind the presenters. And if you just had one person presenting, they could just sit in the middle of the presenter's table if we just had a one-person discussion. So I think we need to look at that rather than them being directly in the center but behind the applicants or whoever staff. But I think it makes great sense. I think the main thing for me is the ability of the board whoever chair in the center to see the board members. Because it's hard when you're sitting at a straight table like at City Hall. You can't see, you have to keep looking down to the ends of the table to see who might want to speak or who is speaking. So I think having some curvature is important.
It doesn't quite, maybe it's just a design, it doesn't really look that much of a curvature versus a U shape. So that just may be the way it's pictured.
Yeah, that picture makes it more curved than
It
that
is,
picture.
yeah. So, I mean, part of it is the dimensions. I think if you look at the drawing here, there's a little bit shallower curve maybe. Where originally putting it together, it was a little bit broader curve. But if you have to make a choice. If you're going to go horseshoe, you're going to have a lot of dead space here between you and the folks versus having a shallower curve, which allows you to bring the presenters and such closer in and to do that round table.
Well, my other question or point is the presenter's table, that's movable back and forth.
Correct.
But you said that allows the ability to close that loop in if you want to have, so for example, today when we had our joint meeting with Open Space and Trails, so if you had moved that in, you would have had several board members would have had their backs to the audience. So for me, that's not as good as being able to perhaps having some ability to extend on both arms another small segment, so no one's has their back to the audience.
Yep.
With 3 boards, I think that'd be true. With the 2, I think you could put folks in around the U, and then it'd be staff kind of with their backs.
Well, then the other question I would have is even around the U, so even with 2 boards, I mean, how tight would that be? You know, because you got papers, you got computers, you need a little space. I'd be concerned of being too friendly.
And that was the
Hours at a time.
yeah.
So.
Well, still, but
Yeah.
you're looking at future boards. You know, what may work well for us may not work well for the next person who sits in our seats.
not like
So I
the
want to make sure
building
they
at
have
all.
a little personal space.
And that might be more of a dimensional issue, how long we make those wings that you can pull out towards and use the same kind of concept to create a large round or not.
Like sliding these tables out and sliding them under with connections.
You know, I think this is really innovative, and when you do new design, you're always refining it further. But it really reminds me of a slide on an RV. You know, you now have these really nice narrow RVs, and then they pull out a
Hydraulics?
slide with the kitchen, goes back in, or where the couch is, or something to create a little space in the center, and that's kind of what you're doing. But to also then borrow from that concept, what they often have will be along the sides a fold-up table component that you just, tabletop. And so you really could kind of complete the loop even when it's open on the lower drawing by having something that just flips up, has an arm that swings out, goes underneath it, and it adds the seating capacity in there.
Yeah, that would address George's.
Yeah, that would be kind of without having to build the full length of it and get it real heavy and imposing.
Go back to the drawing board.
But I think you could do something like that. They do that, again, all the time in RVs, so that there's a real small little kitchen area, but once you're in there, you can flip it up and have a little more cutting board space
Yeah,
type
you have
of
to
thing.
remember that we're still using the table at the time, so we don't want things that would
No,
confine
they'd have to be
our
stable.
space. Yeah.
But
Have to
I'm
still
just
be
saying,
usable.
it wouldn't encroach on our space, but it would, there's a way to kind of, swing it up right from there. And then when the table's pulled out, I would imagine this is going to be used with the table out more often than not, but when this meeting room happens. So making sure the slides really work well and, aren't going to have the runners break, as it were, the way that refrigerator drawers can break the little slides pretty easily sometimes.
What the commissioner's talking about is actually taking this concept, except making it larger. So, so to speak, as if these would come out, we just build these deeper, and that's where it slides in, unless you want it a lot more intimate, or else you can just do like you're saying, is build these flip-up arms and still allow this very close.
Think about all the various restaurants that have
absolutely.
square tables that you can
Yeah.
flip up to a round table and seat 6 or 8 instead of 4.
So the desire is to have something relatively close like this in.
Yeah, I think so, at least for me. And again, not becoming so imposing by having it, giant all the time.
Yeah. And we were just talking about, and this is really difficult to try to put in perspective, certainly on a drawing, but we were sitting here, I'd counting the panels up above to try to get an idea how wide this would be. We think the screen's close to 12 feet.
I think it's a 13-foot screen, so you'd be about a half foot
and that's
less wide as the screen.
This is 12.5 on the drawing and what it's showing here dimension-wise. So it gives you an idea of the size of the table itself.
Well, think about our old room. We didn't have that wide of a table, but we did have a nice curve, and we could all see each other.
Right.
I'm just thinking we're all used to having, at least I am, with the elbow room we've all become accustomed to here. So we're looking at 5 people within the space of this screen on a curve. If you're looking at your plan view up here, you've got 5 in the back, 2 on each wing, and then maybe 3 more on the small table in the front. So we're looking at between 9 and 12 people in this design. And the question George brought up was something I was wondering. Elbow room. Are we going to be, this right here is a 5-foot table, right? Or is it? It's probably about 5 feet. And we're looking at 150 inches?
150 inches.
150 and then 80 on the sides or 60 on the sides? 60, so the sides are about the length of these tables now. It seems if you're trying to get a lot of people around it, it might feel a little cramped, but I guess it normally does.
I think you need a 3D printer model from the library.
One of the things we come up against dimensionally too is we heard a lot about the challenges, like when we use the current city council chambers. That's a really large table that feels a little disconnected too. So we're trying to
make it good.
Trying to keep it, a little bit more compact, I guess, based on previous just in your guys' experience in different hearing rooms. That's what we were trying to accommodate.
I'm just trying to get an idea. I mean, if you look at just using these 3 tables here with slightly more curvature, I'm trying to get an idea if that would be sort of the length. Total length of using these 3 tables.
Yeah, this U is not a whole lot different than what you're sitting in now dimensionally. You're a little bit wider than it would be right now, but you're not sitting on the back.
5 of us and put it into a place where you could put 6.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, well, the only reason we're not using that is because your back is to the screen.
Right.
It's a expensive and complicated enough thing that it wouldn't bother me to see a cardboard mock-up. You could build a scale mock-up of the thing.
We do that
maybe
all the time.
One of these as a base, just
with movable chair.
We could all sit down at it and say, George will be really uncomfortable if I'm sitting here next to him like this.
I am.
And if I could
I like
add,
my personal space.
I agree. I do too. Yeah.
If I could add, so when I got this drawing, actually it was a lot of cut and glue on John's part of paper and glue. But when I got this, I went out on the internet and I researched a lot of furniture vendors and different, and I actually found somebody who said they would do this, and so they actually did this 3D here. And this was just kind of a start. This is what we could do. They're super excited about the opportunity to see how they can finesse this with flip-up sides, or if we needed more of a curve, or I can have them play with that. We can get a few more prints and come back at our next update. They turned this around in less than 12 hours.
Wow, that's great. Where are they?
They're actually out of Texas is their main office, but they actually manufacture in Nebraska.
Oh.
So I think it's all doable. We do have our vendor who is Pear, who's doing our specifications for the furniture package. They are also reaching out to a couple other furniture vendors to find out if there was somebody else that could custom, or do they have something like this with the intent that you're looking for. So we will have more to show you at the next meeting. But right now, but I think it's great for us to get your initial. The only other thing I wanted to point out is I know that beetle kill was an important factor for this board to use it where we could. I did ask this company if they could do this in beetle kill, and they can't. So if that's super important for that to be beetle kill for this piece of furniture,
Trim accent.
then yeah, so then we would want to try to pursue a different vendor.
I'd like to see some trim or accent. I understand. It is very strong, though. It's stronger than we think. But if they aren't comfortable working with it, I bet we could put, I just want to have something. I think it's important because we've been trying to incentivize everybody else in the world to use beetle kill. We should be trying to use something that's beetle kill.
So currently, just so you know, the back wall where the drop-down screen would be is essentially wrapped in the beetle kill. So we have it in the room.
Get some kind of flair on it. It would be great, but if not, I understand, but it would still be great.
Yeah, it seems you could do some accents of some sort with the product.
A little splash.
I might glue some on.
John can with this paper glue.
Yeah.
Use wood glue.
And I think from the podium discussion too, the more flexibility that we can add into the room, I think the better off we'll be. So we can certainly look at both sides and maybe even a plate in the middle that if we had to do something in the center, we could even open it up from the floor standpoint and make that work for y'all.
Steve? Steve?
See, 2 points. I'm not wed to having beetle kill. There are many tree species which can be grown sustainably. They grow fast. They can cut down a live tree that's perfectly healthy, that comes from a sustainable forestry project that I'd be perfectly fine with. I could see us not all sitting, the 5 of us, in the little nice curve there. Somebody's going to want to sit on the side so they can see a screen better, or one thing or the other. And then I would also hope that we could host the EOTC in this spot, and I don't know how many people we can get around, cram in to make that work, but anything's better than what they have in Town Hall right now.
We've also got, plans to have some flip-up tables as well. I mean, you could always just add, even though it wouldn't fit the furniture itself, possibly just add some additional tables and make it a little larger for even bigger groups that may come in. So John has been very clear with us to make this as flexible and multi-purpose as we possibly can. So all this is great input that we'll be able to kind of come back and see if we can meet that.
I'm not going to go into my position on beetle kill because it's another story, but chairs. Are we going to have an opportunity? Because sitting in these chairs that are really nice for the public, maybe they're really uncomfortable to sit in for 8 hours at a time. So I know we were going to have some options, so we all didn't pick a different chair, but those will be coming back to us, some choices.
Yes.
Okay.
We spend a lot of time in them.
Good enough feedback?
Have we got everything we
Great
need,
stuff.
you think?
I had one other little thing here just to point out on that drawing, is that there is a press table down on the bottom of the screen, and whatever we do for the main table will have that match, and that can always be slid.
Oh,
as
perfect. We move it around.
Another piece to use in that. So
good idea.
Okay. The other was the naming of the building. And John, do you want to talk a little bit about this?
It's just to do a little bit of more brainstorming and dialogue. We have an opportunity as we redo this building right now. We've always called that the Courthouse Plaza, and then named all the rooms Plaza 1, 2, or 3 as they're shared. And maybe that is the building that we want to go back to. But as we complete construction of this building, there's an opportunity for us to rethink, do we want to go back to the Plaza building, Courthouse Plaza building, or do we want to go back to a building of a different name for the county, and then what might a process be that we would want to go through to consider that?
I kind of like the Newman Center.
The Newman Center? Well, for the right price, George.
No, actually, I'll be chairman at the time. So
but I would like to explore something historical. I mean, Aspen, Pickens County is very historical. It's one of the earlier towns in the state. And I would like to, I don't know if a figure or something that really speaks to, this is Pickens County, you're in Aspen. I would like that versus just sort of a generic plaza, courthouse plaza building. Patty?
I think having something with the history in it, but I think for wayfinding, it's Courthouse Plaza. People, you say it's the Courthouse Plaza. It's next to the courthouse, which is such a significant building. So that's always been, at least for me, it's the Courthouse Plaza next to the courthouse. It kind of made sense. I don't have a problem carrying that name forward unless another great idea really jumps at me. I haven't really thought about it, so it doesn't mean that tonight in the middle of the night at 3 o'clock in the morning I might not send you an email when I think of this great name. But right now I kind of like the history of Courthouse Plaza because it makes sense. And maybe then doing something in the entryway that has some of the history, which I think we might be looking at anyway, to tie that in. But I think there's going to be some thought that has to go into it.
Yeah, I mean, the courthouse will still be a landmark regardless, even if you call it the Newman Center next to the courthouse, right? So it's always a landmark. But I'd like to sort of acknowledge the history and the uniqueness of our communities. Rachel?
You know, when the city built their housing on a scrap of Burlingame land out at the Airport Business Center, they did have a kind of a naming competition and put out some guidelines, and they looked it through. It ended up that the city attorney won the competition with the name Annie Mitchell, but the historical context was that she was the original land grantee and the original homesteader in that area. So that name had some significance, and so do a number of the Burlingame roads. But so I guess I'm similar to Patty in that I'm open to other things, but I don't want to get too convoluted or end up with a name that people ignore and then just call it the Courthouse Plaza all the time as well. And that, it's really not a bad name now. I mean, we may associate it a little too much with the older building, but the older building is coming back as a rehab. So I'm open to looking at other things, I guess is what I'm saying. And, if anything, what you end up hearing a lot is people saying, well, General Pitkin was an Indian murderer, and so are we celebrating that history if we are too prominent with Pitkin? And, there's various movements have come and gone over time to rename the county as a whole because of that. So, not all of our history is shining. As it were, but we are where we are today. So again, I'm open to looking at other things, but I think the challenge is going to be a little bit of a separation of the new admin from the old admin building, and people knowing which of the two wings to go into. And so it's almost like we're going to have wings now, as because the two buildings are connected, and one's going to be the street facing, and one's going to be the L of it. So. I have no great concepts right now other than let's keep talking about it.
Greg?
I was just going to say, I appreciate what you said about Pitkin. I really don't want to name anything else after Pitkin, but that poses a dilemma. I've always had a problem with the plaza, because if there was a plaza there, it's kind of been taken over and for a good purpose with the veterans, but it's not a plaza. It's a county building. It's an admin building. We could keep it simple. Newman Building is starting to grow on me. Keep saying it.
Center, I think.
Newman Center, thank you. We've got floors and wings, so there are other naming opportunities for things. And I'm worried about opening up a public, naming competition for several floors. I don't know if we want to go there, but I think keeping it simple, keeping it descriptive. The county building is probably what I'll end up calling it. That's really what it's going to be.
Pitkin County Sheriff and Administration Building.
I was tongue-in-cheek was going to say, how about Plaza 2.0? But I would keep it more of a generic name and not attach a person's name to it, I don't think.
Sorry, George.
Because there's so many people in Aspen's history, and I mean, I wouldn't pick any one person as who created Aspen. And I wouldn't, I'd call it the Ute City Building, but that name's already taken, so.
And Ajax, that's already taken, so.
Yeah.
Let's just think about it. You guys help us out. Give us some.
The Compromise Mine was a very popular place. We call it the Compromise Building.
Because people wouldn't always agree that we compromise.
All right.
The
more work
argument
to be
building.
done.
Okay, and
Okay,
just
no
to
rush.
just to check in, it doesn't sound like right now. I think the board would be interested in getting some ideas, maybe internally on naming ideas. We're not right now looking at a larger competition or anything like that, which isn't necessarily what we're suggesting. But maybe we can set something up internally to get suggestions and bring those back to you guys and see if anything sounds better than Courthouse Plaza, and if not, we'll move back into the Courthouse Plaza.
Until we find a name for the
Or the Newman Center.
Or the Newman
It's hard
Center.
to say
More
which.
accurate.
Yeah, if there's any naming contest, for a better word, I would just have it be among the employees to come up with a name and
Send it out, see what they
not
come
put
back.
it out to the public. Because somebody,
We
you know,
haven't
somebody
tried-
might come up with a great name, so.
Traditionally, naming rights are made for a very large contribution to
Right.
support the center. And I don't think that we're soliciting that, but if someone wanted to help reduce the cost of the $21 million building,
I'm not naming it after somebody who gives us money. I'm
No,
not.
no. Well, you know, there was a large contribution
Taxpayers
made
building.
to the ARC, and they just named it the Aspen Recreation Center. So, you know, they're
It does happen.
Okay, let's, I think we've got some direction,
That does help.
in-house ideas,
Okay.
from simple to
We'll come back
historic.
with some ideas and see if anything interests the board, and it's really at your discretion at the end of the day.
Okay.
It'll be rather quick. We have a September deadline, so we'll turn this around pretty quickly for you, but it's good to
We
hear
could
that.
name it by then.
Why do we have a September deadline?
Signage.
Ordering
Sign
signage.
package opportunities, but
Well, let's plan some decent time on the agenda when that comes up.
yeah.
Okay, let's take a break.
Let's take a break.
Back at 2:30 for our next agenda item, and we'll have time, I think, between that and our next agenda to finish up on open discussion.
Open discussion.
All right, next on the agenda, we're going to get an update from our Clerk and Recorders Department.
So, let me make introductions. Good afternoon. My name is Janice Voss-Caudell. I'm the Clerk and Recorder. And what we would like to review with you is an update of the Clerk and Recorder's Office, which includes introductions here. Is our Election Department Manager, is Kelly McNicholas Curry. And we'll start with the Election Department, and then we will move on to the Motor Vehicle Department. And our Manager in Motor Vehicle is Shelley Popish. And we'll wrap it up. Well, we won't wrap it up. I'll wrap it up. The Recording Department Manager is Ingrid Gruder. She'll review the recording, and then I'll wrap it up at the end and then ask you if you have any questions. And, of course, if you have any questions as we go through it, please ask, and we're happy to fill you in on whatever you want to know. Thank you. So I'll have Kelly start us out and take it away.
Okay, it's great to see everybody. I think the last time I was here, we were rushing over and in the midst of a lot of busyness in 2016. So I want to highlight, some of our accomplishments from last year, some trends that we've been seeing, some of the issues and challenges that we saw and overcame, and do the same for the year ahead. So kind of starting here in the summer of 2017 and moving forward. So last year was a big year, obviously, for the primary and the general election. We executed some expanded voter services, including the implementation of 2 24-hour drop boxes, one at the Town of Snowmass Village Town Hall and another at the Basalt Town Hall, which we collaborated with Eagle County to share that box, so both Eagle County and Pickens County voters could drop off their ballots there at any time. Both of those boxes were under 24-hour security surveillance and were funded through a Secretary of State grant. We also, in the weekend ahead of the general election, set up what we called kind of drop while you shop kiosks at both Clark's Market as well as the Jour de Fête Grog Shop Complex here on Durant. And that facilitated some deliveries over the weekend. We did not have any open services on Sunday before Election Day, and so this year we were able to provide that service. It also acted as a reminder to voters that Election Day was Tuesday and what their options were for continuing to vote. We had a exponential increase in registrations for our ballot track service. And what that is voters can sign up to receive text, voicemail, or email messages about when we've mailed them their ballot, when we've received their ballot back, and when it was accepted for counting, meaning that it went through the signature verification process and was accepted. We also implemented a service that the United States Post Office offers, which is a barcode tracking. And so internally that allowed me to research where a ballot might be in the mail stream. So if we had kind of an area where there were some questions from voters or voters who received their mail in other parts of the country, I was able to look up where that ballot kind of fell out of the mail stream and help the voters in that way. We additionally had a brand new voting system last year. It was important for us to do this last year because we wanted to minimize any liability that we saw with our very old prior voting system. The rollout went excellent. We used it in both the primary and the general election. We had a lot of service from our vendor, Dominion Voting Systems, which I think was an advantage to us because we did opt to implement the new system last year, whereas this year there is double the number of counties who are doing it. So we got a little bit more one-on-one attention from them. This required a lot of staff training and learning, and also required us to rewrite all of our training protocols for our judges who were working in the polling center using this new voting system, as well as counting the ballots at our central count location in our office. We had extensive community outreach last year. Janice always goes to the caucuses to present what's happening in elections and details about the upcoming elections. We implemented a weekly newsletter to stakeholders, which I believe you are all on that list, and I hope you received positively. It let us connect with who we saw as individuals in the community that could then pass accurate information on throughout the community about the election, including, dates and deadlines, look for your ballot in the mail, recruitment for election judges, those types of topics. We additionally collaborated with groups that we never had before in the past, such as Next Gen through the city of Aspen, to try and recruit kind of younger, more technologically savvy cadre of election judges. With this, we had the most judges that we've ever hired and trained and recruited ever. We brought on 82 judges for the election, and we implemented an online election a scheduling management tool that we use that allowed judges to log in, sign up for shifts, manage their own schedule, know what exactly what their role was, and receive text and email reminders of when their shifts were. And so this was really beneficial to us in our office, because in the past we would have to hire on a temporary staff or an election judge just to manage that and do phone calls and email reminders to people. So putting this, giving this opportunity for judges to kind of take that into their own responsibility was a real success, I think, for everyone. Additionally, while all of this was going on, we had a full kind of shift in all of our staff in elections last July. So between the primary and the general election is when, I moved up to the manager position. We brought a new person on board to take over the application specialist position. We brought on a new voter registration frontline clerk specialist. And they all performed excellently. I mean, we have a really, really high quality, sophisticated, intelligent staff that I couldn't be more thrilled to work with. Some of the trends that we're seeing is greater voter participation. So we had the greatest turnout that we ever had last November in terms of the number of voters at 10,770. And that was just slightly above, about 600 votes more than we had in 2012. Which is a 70% voter turnout rate for our active and inactive voter population. So these are all eligible voters. We had 70% of eligible voters in Pitkin County participate. That's really high compared across the country. What we are seeing is an increase in voting by mail ballot. And, along with that, we're seeing a decrease in voters turning up at the polls. Voters who typically have to turn up at the polls, there are some people who still prefer to vote that way. A lot of the voters are voters who maybe have moved and didn't update their record and so never received a mail ballot from us and then need to appear in person or in our office to update their records. We also doubled the number of overseas voters that we had registered with us last year, and those voters are electing to return their ballots via email. Now that option's only extended to our military and overseas voters, but predominantly by far that is how they're choosing to vote and scan their ballot. They have to sign an affidavit with their written signature and send that back to us in order to accept and count. Now, some of the issues and challenges that we have, elections just continue to be more complex, and technology continues to interface with elections more and more. And so our challenge is finding judges who are comfortable using kind of everyday technology, as well as comfortable learning the complexities of voter registration in particular. Because now that anyone can walk into the polls at any time and be able to register, our judges are charged with knowing how to do that. And so we always kind of run into some difficulties finding enough really wonderful people to staff in those positions. And we have been lucky that we've had a lot. But training, always takes a lot of time, and it's something that we are always focused on trying to do better because it's so important. Looking ahead, in 2017, we continue to count as one of our accomplishments that our voter rolls are really clean. We do checks every day, every week, every month that allow voters, allow us to update voter records. These include using the National Change of Address system through the post office. We can make a voter change and communicate with the voter saying, hey, we know you moved within the county to this address, or we know you maybe have moved to a different county, or you've moved out of state, and clean up their record that way. We also interface with motor vehicle. So when someone goes to update their driver's license, now we have a seamless electronic transmission of that information that comes over from their motor vehicle record, whereas in the past we had to rely on waiting to receive paper forms to be mailed to us. Additionally, we do checks with the CDPHE, so the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment provides us with the deceased list every month. So we scrub that against our voter list and then remove voters who may still be on that. We also participate in the Election Resource Information Center, which 20 states are part of, and this nonprofit serves as the mediator between the data from 20 states, scrubs that data, and then lets us know, for example, if somebody registered in Connecticut, then we receive that information and we can cancel that voter in Colorado. So they're only, registered to vote in one state at one time. For moving forward for us, so people wonder, what do we do in the off season, right? What do we do when elections are over? I mean, obviously we do a lot of record maintenance. In our department, we hold a strategic planning retreat every January where we meet for 2 days, and we kind of take all the feedback we've gotten from the election, from our judges, from our staff, and stakeholders, and we kind of throw it up on the board and then prioritize from that which projects emerge as important for us to work on because there is a demonstrated need. And so some of those projects include we're working on implementing better judge training, including online tools so that the election judges can work from home and feel best prepared when they come to work. We're also working on like a routine database audit of the county portion of the statewide voter registration system, including our address library. And we've had a really excellent collaboration with GIS on that since in the last, I think, year and a half, a addressing coordinator has been brought on. So we've had a really excellent working relationship with them to just clean up, street name changes, things like that. Additionally, we're working on security. As you know, security was in the news about a month ago with regards to concerns about elections, and we are working with BITS to sort of proactively address what we see as ways that we think we're strong. How can we be stronger? And maybe offer those as solutions, at least in our department, but potentially countywide. And so that's an ongoing conversation that we're having. We're thrilled about the two-factor authentication that's recently been introduced by BITS. Personally, we have standards that we use for the state system, and we're happy to see some of those standards being implemented at the county level as well.
I didn't pay her to say that.
No, we really are. We really are.
It scans tomorrow.
So,
to take it one step further, I think we're pretty vigilant about our security, and not only our level, the county, but also the Secretary of State. And we are audited by the Secretary of State regarding our security systems within the county. And we are thrilled that we are implementing two-factor authentication. And in fact, we are asking for 90-day password changes as well, because we are being reviewed at the state level regarding those types. So just heads up on that. Okay.
We're also keeping the move in mind. So with the managers here, we have active conversations about planning well for our space so that we can anticipate how we're going to need to use it. Since we've recently changed voting systems, I think that's really helpful for us that we made that change last year and can envision how it's going to fit in the new space. And with that, I'll talk about some trends coming later. But additionally, we're just, we're looking at our space internally, our records management, et cetera, and streamlining and purging and all of that. Trends that we're seeing is, continued use of online voter registration. Voters are going straight to the internet to manage their own records rather than coming into our office and filing papers. Additionally, commercial off-the-shelf technology. So I'm not sure if anyone here voted in person, but all of our, and we welcome you always when we're set for an election to come, and we're happy to demonstrate our equipment to you. So at the polling place, what that means is that we have a laptop. We have laptops that people check in on. We have tablets that voters mark their ballot, and then printers that print that ballot. And this is all commercial off the shelf, which I think, that's the way that voting systems technology is moving. And I think that's a really great benefit for the county because it makes it much more affordable to replace any equipment or make upgrades to rather than proprietary hardware. And that's the same for our ballot counters. So the scanners are large, yet commercial off-the-shelf scanners that we use to count our ballots. Another trend we're seeing is complex legislation, as always, and I will just take that right into what I see as a challenge for the coming year. In the general election in November, Colorado voters passed Propositions 107 and 108 to implement a presidential primary and to allow for unaffiliated voters to participate in primaries. That's not really new for Pitkin County. We've always mailed ballots to our unaffiliated voters. It will look different because now unaffiliated voters will get to receive both of the major party ballots. So whereas here, the unaffiliated voter would only be able to vote on county races, now they will have the opportunity to receive the same party ballots that either a Democrat or Republican affiliated voter would. We have they also can make a preference before the election or during the election saying, well, I don't want both ballots, I just want this party's ballot, and that doesn't count as an affiliation. They're just asking for a specific ballot. Then if they receive both ballots and they return whichever ballot they return to us, we have to note which party's ballot they return to us. So we're kind of running into some procedural complexities that are very different from how we've run primaries in the past, which for us is going to raise some questions about, how many ballots do we need to order of each style, if voters are able to sort of switch their preferences from one party to another, from one party to, receiving both ballots, what does that look like for our ballot inventory? We don't know all the answers to this just yet because this is currently under rulemaking at the Secretary of State's office. So
when we're closer to that time, we will meet with you to review what our process is, and we know we will have to do a lot of education outreach at that point and make it very clear to people what's going on. But right now we're working through the process through rule with the Secretary of State.
We think our big challenge may be voter confusion.
Rachel?
I think that might be the case because at least through talking at CCI last session, they gave an impression that there would really just be one ballot and it would have both parties' candidates on it, and you could choose your candidates within one party, but once you started voting one party's primary ballot, you couldn't pick and pan and go back and forth between I like this Dem and I like that Republican, I like this Republican, I like that Dem, that would invalidate your primary ballot.
So the current rules as proposed and under rulemaking right now do not include that option. They include the two separate ballots.
That you have to, so you'd have to request first which ballot to be sent, or you would mail both ballots, but you only mail back one.
Yeah. Right. And we could spend the next half an hour going through this with you. So this is all pending again with rule. What you stated was a discussion with many different other procedures, but when we get closer to that time, we'll review it with you.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. And then just the last, point that I want to make as far as the complexity for us. In 2012, legislation changed to require that this year we implement what's called a risk limiting audit. So this is just a new audit provision, which is arguably based on more solid theory and statistical validity that we will need to implement after all the ballots are counted. We go back and audit and make sure that everything was counted correctly and that our machines properly counted and tabulated all the votes accurately. And so we did a pilot of this in last year's primary that went successful. We think our procedures are solid, but this is new for us here in the fall. And we are also, trying to best prepare ourselves by participating in working groups at the state level on both of these topics, the audit as well as the implementation of the changes to the primary next year.
And the risk limited audit is also going through rule change right now, and Greg and I were on the working group with the risk limited audit. I had to ask Kelly to be on the working group with the primary election and design of the ballot as well.
Thank you.
That's elections for last year and this year.
Thanks.
You forgot one major thing, the addition to your party. In the midst of all this, Kelly, if everyone else had a baby girl.
I said I had two, I had two babies last year, the general election and then my baby.
Great. I had a question about the Secretary of State Wayne Williams' decision to send all the records to the commission in Washington. And I was just curious about the trail of our records. Like, anybody can go in and pay you a certain amount of money and get those records. But does Wayne Williams keep a copy of is it all on a computerized system, or did he have to request it from you and then you sent it to him? Or how does that process work?
In 2008, and this is from the Help America Vote Act from 2000, the state of Colorado kicked off, during the presidential election, a new voter registration system and election management system in 2008. The Secretary of State oversees that system. We use that system to register voters, design our addressing, run our elections, etc. Each county is responsible to enter the data for their county, right? But the Secretary of State's database in Denver maintains that system, okay? So when the Secretary of State was asked for a Colorado Open Records request to supply all public information for voter registration, which I would give to you as a candidate, which we would give to anyone who is running an issue committee, or we just received a request from Boulder yesterday. He in turn began to prepare providing that public information. What he did not provide was, according to Colorado statute, is private information. And what does that include? That includes your driver's license, your social security number, your birth month and date, as well as your email address. What am I missing here? So he prepared that. Now, what happened in the meantime was, filed in Washington, D.C., a group called the Electronic Privacy Information Center filed a temporary restraining order in D.C. And the judge heard the arguments on July 7th, and we're waiting for the judge to provide a ruling. But in the meantime, what the Secretary of State did was he answered a letter to him, which not only included the Cora request, but also several questions about elections, and he replied to that letter a few days ago. And in that letter, in answering all the questions, he also stated that he would not fulfill the initial Cora, but if the commission wanted voter registration records in the future, they would have to ask again specifically for those records. So basically, he was complying with Colorado law. Okay.
Can I make a really important point too? The state hosts the database. They cannot make any changes to voter data. Only the county, so that is within the purview of the county clerk. And so only the county can make any changes to a voter record. So if you filled out a voter registration form and submitted it to the state, they will turn around and send it to us because we're the ones who have that access. They don't have that access. They can just see what the data is.
Was there anyone from Pickens County who unregistered to vote because of that, and how many?
We had 6 confidential and 7 withdrawals. So if you calculate that based on our registered voters, it's about 0.1%, 0.1%. So 6 and 7 people.
And they did so specific on this request for information?
You know, I didn't speak to them, but based on what staff
A lot of them came through online, so it's hard to know that because there's not a dialogue. And we did have some, we had at least one voter who had moved out of state.
So there's, interesting. I didn't think of that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you.
I had a quick question, if I could, just about election monitors. Some people really take an interest in that and consider it their duty to come in and as an independent election monitor. Have we changed the way that those people are accommodated or required to register or anything? Have we made it easier or harder for them to participate?
So what you're asking about is watchers?
Maybe it's a poll watcher? Thank you.
So per statute, a watcher may come to you as a candidate and ask to be a watcher. You need to provide for us in our office who your watchers are. We will process the paperwork accordingly. New rule, the last couple of years are, in answer to your question, some of the things that have been implemented are watchers need to go through training through the Secretary of State's office, most particularly because we have private information. We are using screens in the polling center that show private information. Watchers receive training. Based on their training determines what they can watch. Okay? So any area within our election where we're processing mail ballot, from the start of opening polls until we close polls, watchers can be present. Does that answer your question?
That's great. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Kelly. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Kelly.
Yeah, now it's Shelley.
Hi.
Hi.
So I'm going to start with motor vehicles accomplishments. A couple big ones are our move from Main Street to our current location at Vector Bank. It was a very streamlined move, and there were no hitches. We opened to the public the following business day. And next, we hired some limited-term employee for our busy summer season due to staffing shortages from FMLA and a 3-week leave of absence. Some of our trends for 2016 to present, our overall transactions counts have increased 23% over the last 5 years. Our online renewals have increased to 217%. We don't really advertise too heavily on that option, just for the fact that you do have to be the perfect customer. You cannot be late past your grace month. You can't. You don't have to show. If you have to show insurance at that time, you can't renew online. So that would add more questions, calls to the office for staff that were already, busy enough. Adds more phone traffic, and so we're hoping in the near future that our new computer system, our state computer system in 2018 will alleviate some of those issues and give us some more solutions to that problem.
Shelley's going to talk about the drives conversion next year. It's a huge project, but she talked about her department the last 5 years. Her transaction counts have increased 23%. But what I also wanted to review with you is our revenues that we're taking through our department. The last 5 years, our revenues have increased 30%. So it's interesting, the history of it. From 2001 to 2006, it increased 33%. So we were looking at 4.6 million up to 6.1. Of course, the next 5 years, we hit the recession, but it went up 3% those 5 years. The last 5 years, it's gone up from 6.3 million to 8.4 million. So we're running more than $8.4 million worth of small transactions through our office. And a majority of that is motor vehicle, and they've seen an increase of 23% in their transaction counts in the last 5 years. Now, I asked Shelley, concerned with workload, I said, would you do a needs assessment for me? This is late last winter, early January. So I said, Shelley, would you provide for me your transaction counts, the types of transactions that you do, and give me a reasonable amount of time it takes to do a transaction? And what's part of your other workload? So take the people in your department and calculate for me what your FTE should be. She is short 1.5 FTEs in her department to reasonably process her transactions. They crank in that department. They do a really darn good job. So I just want you to know that. But she faces additional challenges next year because we have this huge statewide conversion. And before she goes into detail, I want to give you a big picture on it. It's a $93 million conversion, statewide conversion project. The Department of Revenue Motor Vehicle Department is asking for counties to step up to the plate and provide personnel to make this project successful. The manpower they are asking includes 18-month full-time employees to work in Denver, 5 18-month part-time, 16 8-month full-time, 12 6-month full-time. Shelley will be participating from Pitkin County 6 weeks next year in February and March, 6 full weeks in Denver to assist, okay, in addition to another group of people of six weeks. That's 54 people from counties to step up and help them with this conversion next year. So that is the manpower that we are supplying at county level to move forward with this conversion. It's huge. So my concern is that we support Shelley and provide her the support and the operation and to make sure her operations is successful. So we'll work through the 2018 budget with Shelley and make sure that we get there. But I want her to talk a little bit more about the conversion with you.
So our current system is over 20 years old, so it's well overdue that we get a conversion, and hopefully, again, there will be a lot of great solutions to the current problems that we have, such as that online, the online issues, make it more efficient. We are, and it does take, we have 2 new employees that we just hired, so it does take 6 months to a year, more on the year, and to make get an employee proficient in motor vehicle and self-sufficient. So it's not an easy job to learn. There's a lot of things to learn, and the state of Colorado motor vehicle conversion they're having a traveling roadshow coming in October to show us what that system looks like. We will have an hour before we open to the public to see that presentation. So all staff, frontline staff, can attend that. And the training, like Janice did say, the participation is either an expert user or a tester, and all users and testers are required to be in Denver during that training. Each county is asked to send a team member for 6 weeks to 8 months as either the expert user or a tester, and that, again, is in Denver. We will be doing our part, like Janice said, because I will be going for 6 weeks full-time. And then there will be an all-staff training for 3 days for the new computer conversion, probably in the spring. And that will be in another location yet to be determined. In Colorado, of course, and possible office closure for 3 days for motor vehicle. So we will have to prepare advertising for the closure to educate the public on that. And then, of course, the next business day that we are open, we'll be extremely busy for our staff. And we will need to prepare for that as well. And then there will be one more separate full day of training for accounting staff, and that will be both recording and motor vehicle will be short-staffed for that training as well. And also for the shortage, we'll have to advertise again for that, and budget for the travel, the meals, the lodging, and the overtime for that staff. It's a moving target at this point. We don't know what that looks like. We don't know where it is. We don't know if it's going to be 3 days of closure. It's really not sure. We're not sure what that looks like.
I'm sure Rachel has the same question as I have, but two questions. One, 6 weeks seems abnormally long for training such as that, and then all the counties are going to have to undertake this financial burden. I'm sure some of the smaller counties is going to be really hard hit.
County afford that?
I don't get it.
Yeah, not all counties will be participating. Right now, when I mentioned the 18-month full-time, the large counties are picking up that burden. So they're dedicating a person. We have to look and investigate whether or not we'll be reimbursed her salary for her time, but she won't be training during that time. She's going to be helping with testing the system.
Yeah.
Okay. Right now, the people that are helping for 18 months are programming the system, so there are phases in developing this. Our part will be Shelley helping for 6 weeks in Denver towards the next year with testing the system. And then what she talked about is training and closing the office for 3 days with staff, with the conversion a little bit later next year. Does that answer?
Yeah, it just seems like
on the road to train other people.
It just seems like as you're testing, why couldn't that be done online, off-site?
Ideally, that's what we would love, but they're requesting that the testers be in the office.
And again, that may change too. We don't know exactly what that looks like, because I don't think they know exactly what that looks like.
Yeah, I'm sitting here just thinking, I really wish I had known about this when we submitted our legislative agenda to CCI with the June 30th deadline, because we could have submitted a legislative request that there be reimbursement for counties for this expense. And, I think that separate from CCI, we might want to pursue introducing a bill to do that from with Carrie Donovan or Millie Hamner. And then let CCI vote to support it or not support it, and I'd imagine it would. This is a huge transfer of state responsibility and obligation, and that they have a revenue source for through the Department of Motor Vehicles to counties. And, I'm just looking at it, and just the Denver lodgings, unless you're in some sort of horrendous place, is going to be $135 to $180 a day. That's really expensive hit to expect counties to just absorb. Let alone the staff time and kind of backfilling the position and meals per diem, that's probably $80 a day as well or more.
I hear what you're saying, but again, as I mentioned earlier, let me investigate that as well. I think we are being reimbursed, but I need to look into that a little bit more.
Okay.
My concern is exactly what are we being reimbursed. I know some things are being reimbursed, but I don't know exactly what, because we just discussed this last week and gave go-ahead with our contribution last week.
Yeah, I just feel a little awkward. You gave the go-ahead, and I realize it's your department and you're an elected official, but we have to approve the budget for the department. And so it's kind of backing us into a position of a greatly enhanced budget to cover this, without knowing what the reimbursement is. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But the sooner we get that information nailed down and in writing, so it's not something they can change and go back and forth or fudge a detail about later, the
Rachel,
better.
I feel comfortable that they will be reimbursed. I don't know it specifically, exactly down to the detail, exactly what they'll be reimbursed.
Yeah, but so I would just like a much better and bigger picture of that, because that is just unfortunately it's just something that again, smaller counties can't absorb it at all, and it still is a hit to our county. We'll have to take it out of the furnishings of the clerk's office in the new building if we're not fully reimbursed, and it's just nuts. That would be nuts, and I can't imagine. I mean, certainly there needs to be heavy involvement with the clerks to make sure the system works and it's not implemented by some outsiders who aren't familiar with what we're doing. But on the other hand, that's a tremendous request of manpower from counties.
It is.
Yeah, so keep us up to date on that, because I don't know what other options we might have, but I want to be able to have the time to explore those other options.
Okay.
I mean, what would have happened if we said, no, we can't help? Or what if a majority of counties said, no, we can't help with this request for your personnel? What would have been the alternative?
The alternative, I don't see this operation being successful moving forward.
Okay. All right, well, keep us informed and up to date. We'll have to have a further discussion on this.
Yeah, I think there'd be, again, finding out what the reimbursement is one thing, but the other thing is going to be finding out what counties end up carrying more of the load on this versus others that don't.
I think there's a benefit to it too. Just you get used to the new system. So when I come back,
yeah,
I have that knowledge too. So that's a definite plus.
By Shelley being involved, we will be more successful in our office with the conversion as well.
All right, we've got about 15 more minutes.
Just have one last thing to say, that the last challenge that we will have in 2018 is our move back to the new building during our busy season. So.
We'll help you out again like we did last time.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shelley?
All right. The recording department had some sort of big
Introduce
time
yourself.
So
for the TV?
Ingrid Gruder, the recording manager. And we had some things happening this last year that took up some time, but are helping out our department. Last July, we signed a contract with CoFile for a new County Fusion recording software system. We started working on that conversion with a vendor in August, and our go-live date was February 6th of this year. The system is providing us with the state-of-the-art features we requested in our RFP and the customization ability to accommodate our particularly high level of indexing that people have gotten used to from Pitkin County. The cost of this system, with all that said, was roughly 1/3 the cost of the other software systems that we considered. In anticipation of that conversion, we replaced outdated servers and computer hardware to comply with the vendor's software specs. We also designed the mapping process for the conversion. Some of the system features, we have off-site disaster recovery and backup for all the recorded document images and indexes. We have e-commerce online shopping cart, which allows web searchers to select and pay for documents online, reducing staff workload. We have backpost features for indexing and images from 1881 to 1977 that will be uploaded at the completion of our imaging project, which I'll get to. We have automated index functionality, which increases efficiencies and accuracy and allows us to provide accurate information to the public more quickly. We have redaction capability, and there are discussions being held legislatively regarding policies for redaction of certain information on recorded documents. So the improved operation efficiencies reduce FTE time and will allow for time spent on the imaging project. So on to the imaging project. This year we continued working with U.S. Imaging in order to digitize all of our recorded documents from 1881 to 1977. We identified indexing structure for documents for integration with a new software system. We conducted quality image checks and identified images that required enhancement. This project is currently in the final stage 3, and we expect delivery next month in August. Are the trends in our department? Our revenues for recording fees have decreased by 3% for the first half of the year, but have increased 38% from the revenue from doc fees. So this indicates that while we have recorded fewer pages of documents, the total sales volume has increased considerably. So the net increase is about 14%. Our online service trends, and this is limited information from February when we went live, our weekly online subscriptions are increasing due to the ease of people paying online. Our plat copy fees are down due to the ease of them downloading the plats online versus coming to the office and paying $5.50. But if they want the big ones, they still have to come and do that. This has reduced our overall copy revenue. However, with the addition of the historical documents and the continued education regarding the ability to purchase online, we feel like the copy fees will surpass our current numbers soon. Yes. Okay, that's fine. Okay, next year, our goals, challenges, opportunities, etc. The imaging, we are going to coordinate with U.S. Imaging and CoFile to import all the historical recorded documents from, again, that's from 1881 to 1977, and that's approximately 104,000 images. We're going to, those will then be in our new County Fusion recording software, so they will be readily available digitally, both on-site and online. Upon the successful import of these images, we will begin indexing all the documents, so documents will be searchable with traditional grantor-grantee name indexing. In addition, after import into the recording system, the images will also be permanently stored on off-site servers, ensuring an efficient backup and disaster contingency. Then with the software vendor, ongoing, we continue to work with them to innovate new system features and functionality for staff and customers. We are going to conduct a survey of online users to assess usage and customer needs and also obtain feedback regarding our fee structure. With the feedback from the survey, we'll create a plan to increase marketing of our online services. The last thing, talk about the plats. Legislation was passed this year to allow for designating the image recorded plats as the official record. This would limit additional storage needs for plat cabinets, and those are big. We will create a potential plan for compliance with this legislation for approval by the board later.
So let me bring that back around to you. So we're going to bring this back to you, okay? So legislation passed law that when we scan a plat, that image can now be our official document. We have been keeping plats, so we have a lot of space being used up with plats going back to our new building. So what we're going to do is research. Will take some time to research plans, not plans, but research a program and bring back to you the feasibility of using an image document as an official document, much like what we do with land use right now documents. And in doing that, what we'd like to do then is we will then have all our plats scanned, and we can take those physical plats and find an off-site storage to create more space for our offices, because it's it fills the back.
We've been in the vault.
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Rachel?
Yeah, kind of a broad question, but back to, you had mentioned the shopping cart features and paying online. And yet, just a little earlier, we talked with John Peacock about using a two-step authentication process just so we can get our email in the future. And I'm wondering what are the security features and how closely you're working with BITS to protect these outside customers' security of their credit card information or whatever they're giving us to be able to use online. I just heard from some presentations on cybersecurity that it's the doors you open to allow customers to come in that can sometimes allow others to come in as well. And so it's not just the emails within the county or county accounting and county finance, but this interface with the public. What's the security there?
This is hosted by our vendor in Texas. This physically is in Texas, and this is from this redundancy of our records, which gets updated daily, every night, basically. So they're not really touching our system. It's from this redundant system in Texas. Yeah. So they don't have the ability to interact. They only have the ability to buy copies.
Okay, but again, then has BITS reviewed the security of the Texas company? Because again, someone at least feels they're doing business with Pickens County. They're buying a record from Pickens County through this third party and giving that person their credit card information online. How are we offering the security of their credit card?
BITS has been working with us throughout this whole conversion with security. You're giving an example of the back. But, and I understand what you're saying. I mean, there are concerns with ransomware. There are concerns with back and breaking in with that. There have been some incidences in Colorado, in smaller counties. And we've worked with the Secretary of State. We've worked with the IT departments, and we always forward this information to BITS. I work with John Lloyd, and yeah, thank you, John, to give the information. So we're aware of it, and our vendors are aware of it as well. So to go into the particulars of how we do it, I don't have that review with you now, but please be assured that during the conversion we were working with BITS. If anything should happen, I'm in communication with John Lloyd to keep him abreast of what incidents are happening throughout the states, and not only with the vendor, with BITS, but we also work with the Secretary of State on security issues as well.
Great, thank you.
I think we're pretty vigilant about it, but with that said, it's always of importance. Do you have anything else?
Just, our challenge, of course, is going to be moving back, keeping up with the daily workload, customer service, and projects, which is the same for the whole office. And we're just hoping that we can do this as seamlessly as we did
with our move to Vectra.
I have to commend staff because moving to Vectra and the Ute, they did it without skip, you know, with in perfect heartbeat. They did it and served the customers. So I'm very proud of what they've accomplished. They worked hard. I would like to bring around to you to discuss budget because I know you expressed concern, especially with the cost with Shelley. But I want to go over you with budget what we've done the last couple of years. Last year, remember, I came to you and asked for $151,000 supplemental to get us through last year's presidential election. I would like you to know that we returned the full amount to the fund balance and did not use that. That election department did an exceptional job last year based on new equipment, new location, new staff, new judges helping us in new environment. So they did an exceptional job and I commend them. So I want you to know we returned that money. The other thing I want you to know is that when we purchased our election equipment, I asked for a quote from the Dominion Voting System, who is the vendor that we purchased equipment from. It's our uniform voting system throughout the state. They quoted me in 2013 $354,000 to replace my election equipment. I budgeted for $236,000 because that's what it would take to replace my old system from 2000. Because we went to a uniform voting system, and with the power of the Secretary of State's office to negotiate that contract, I purchased equipment for $162,000, saving the county $75,000. The other thing I'd like to review with you is with our recording system. When Ingrid and Linda went out for an RFP, what we received back was bids for $85,000, $265,000, and $500,000 and more for bids for converting the recording system. I budgeted $110,000 based on our old system. Our new system was $85,000. We saved $25,000. I just want to reassure you that I think that my staff and I are very fiscally responsible and very astute with our business. We aren't buying a cheap system. We're buying a very good system. And moving forward with this recording system, what we paid in our old maintenance fees with our old system, the next 5 years with what we contracted, we will save you $100,000 in maintenance fees. So I just want to review with you what we have done in the past and how astute we are with how we implement our business for the county. Okay? The other thing I want to review with you is we had a CCA conference last month that was really successful, and I wanted to tell you about it. For 3 days, we had over 300 people from around the state and the country visit us. It was up in the Snowmass Village. A lot of work, received a lot of accolades regarding the conference, but we had people, our opening ceremony and our keynote speaker was Bob Chapman. Inc. magazine names him one of the top 3 leaders in the nation. We had the Secretary of State in his office. We had the chair of the Election Advisory Commission out of Washington, D.C. We had David Becker, who headed the Pew Foundation for the Election Division and now heads the Elections Innovation and Research Group. So we had a great conference. There were a lot of neat things people did. When they visited us, they went to the Bells. They had a golf tournament. They went hiking in the morning. We had the Glenwood Vaudeville players one night to entertain them. So it was a great conference, and people complimented the area, and I was happy to share it with them. The last thing I want to say is I think my staff had mentioned the move. We have drives conversion next year, which I will keep you abreast of, and I'll find out about the cost and get that to you as soon as possible. But I would like to take the moment to commend my managers and my staff of the county office. I think that they do an exceptional job, and I think that they accomplish successful work, and I think that we should be very proud, and I think our community should be thankful that this staff cares about what they do, and they want to provide exceptional service to our community. And I want to thank them personally because they do that a good job. So boom, 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 that's what we do.
Rachel?
And just to be clear, I wasn't concerned about the fiscal responsibility of you and your department. I was concerned about the state pushing their expenses onto us. So
sure, and I get that.
Yeah.
But I really think they will be reimbursing us, but I don't know the specific, Rachel. Okay. Okay.
All right, well,
Thanks,
thank
Rachel.
you all very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
That was great.
He's just shifting around here.
Let's see, why don't you guys start finding a chair up here?
Promise me.
P&Z staff, P&Z board.
I'm just going to get water.
Everyone.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, thanks.
How are you? Good to see you.
Good chair.
Jeff. Yeah. Greg. Good to see you. Good to see you. This could be a bad seat. Was the?
Yeah. You can tell how
I don't know if they're going to
important
use
we
it.
are.
Oh, yeah, really.
Well, you have to, maybe they are, so.
I think they might be.
Yeah, well, there's a seat next to, there's a couple of seats over there.
Next to me.
A couple of seats there.
I'll take that.
I mean,
A couple of seats on that table.
Texting because she showed me something. I'm going in.
Thanks for calling that. Been abandoned.
our last agenda item, we're here with a joint meeting with our esteemed Planning and Zoning Board members. So thank you all for coming. I don't know if the public knows all of you, but you want to just sort of introduce yourselves really quickly so the public knows who's here?
I'm Jeff Conklin. Monty Thompson.
Paul Rudnick.
All right, maybe one or two that will be joining us.
Jim Fashancy and Joe Krabacher will be joining as well.
Yeah, great. So this is going to be a discussion on, I don't have it on my agenda here.
On the back page?
Yep.
The title of today is Overview of Pickens County Transferable Development Rights Program and Related Areas of the Land Use Code and Building Codes.
Great. And Cindy's going to, staff will sort of explain how we got here today and sort of frame the discussion and we're hopefully what the outcomes they'll be looking for from us.
Great. Well, I'm Cindy Hubin. I'm the Community Development Director for Pickens County, and this is Ellen Sassano, our senior long-range planner. And we are here today to pull together a lot of topic areas that over the last few years, the Planning and Zoning Commission and the board have dabbled with a little bit here and there. And we're hopefully today going to at the end of the meeting, come out with a package of alternative code amendments that you can direct the staff to take forward and proceed in our process, which is the Planning and Zoning Commission's role to vet the various code amendments, take them through public hearing process, and work with staff back and forth to finally have a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners that would then be adopted as code language. So that's the process, that's the various roles of the P&Z and the Board of County Commissioners, and hopefully today you've all had a chance to take a look at the memo that we sent out last week, and at the very end of the memo there are some alternatives, and our goal today is to try to discuss the various land use approaches that are in the memo and come up with a package of alternatives that everyone agrees to move forward on relative to many of the issues that we're facing today in Pickens County. It started out that we were going to just talk about TDRs, and when we started thinking about TDRs, we thought, you know what, TDRs are just so connected to everything else that it's almost impossible to separate that from growth management, to separate that from the various things that we've been talking, the topic areas we've been talking about. So what you'll see in your memo is that we are trying to look at really the essential functions of the county and the health and welfare of the citizens and the workforce of the county, and with the land use code, and identify then the potential land use modifications and leverage your tools, which are the zoning and growth management policies and regulations, to promote the concepts and the ideas that we've talked about. And what we've done with a chart that everyone should have received a copy of just now is looked at what else is going on that we have been talking about in the last several work sessions with both the P&Z and the Board of County Commissioners. And a big one that is that we've been working on are the greenhouse gas emissions and climate action planning. And we look at how our land use code influences that, because 70% of the built environment, or 70% of the greenhouse gas emissions are attributed to buildings, to the built environment in Pickens County. Very specifically from our greenhouse gas inventory, we know that. So how we build buildings and the size of those buildings and the scale of those buildings and where those buildings are relative to renewable energy, all that matters, and all that can be influenced if we like. Transportation, parking, transportation in general, parking, roads, airport. 25% of our greenhouse gases emissions are attributed to transportation in general. Every year, the Board of County Commissioners has to look at the budget, and we look at more and more increased costs for road maintenance and just bridges and roads in general, and parking concepts and solutions. And we look at the community impacts of congestion, lifestyle, and also the tourist experience when we look at transportation. Waste management has also been on the horizon in all of our discussions relative to the good work that the landfill's been doing, assessing the needs of the landfill. And again, 5% of the greenhouse gas emissions are attributed to waste management and waste. We're running out of space at the landfill. We think somewhere around, we have a seat for you over here.
Over near Paul.
We made you
right
a
on the end.
seat.
Do I have to sit next to Paul here?
Twice in a row. And 7%, there's been a 7% increase in construction waste just in 2017. Along with that, we're seeing more and more excavation, dirt, fill. I don't know if it's because we're getting down to some of those lots that are harder to negotiate and construct, but we're seeing more and more fill materials go to the landfill. And a big question for this community is, do we really want to ship our waste outside of the community? Are there ways that we can slow that down or prevent that? Again, land use influences much of that. Residential energy, we've talked a lot about that with the board, not so much with the Planning and Zoning Commission, but residential energy use as it relates to our changes in the building codes and our energy codes. Energy use, as we've seen by a very preliminary study, shows that once we get above 7,500 square feet, we're looking at a little, right around 35% increase in the energy use of homes. And then a need for the larger infrastructure. I guess Steve and George and I were all at a meeting on Friday with some of the utilities, Excel and Holy Cross, and we were looking at, the fact that more and more we're looking at upgrade needs in our infrastructure. Do the service lines have to be bigger? Do our compressor stations have to be bigger to supply the energy demands of our community? And then, finally, we've all been looking at our master plans and our community satisfaction, if you will. And in our master planning, we're hearing a lot about rural character. So we wanted to bring that into play, along with we're hearing more and more about the length of the construction activities and just construction, the amount of construction in various neighborhoods and caucus areas. So we want to just tie all those discussions we've been having together into one discussion here to say, your land use code, what you're in charge of, does have an influence on each one of these areas of the community. And when you stop and you think about the various approaches with the land use code, you can say, oh, well, we could build our way out of that. We could build more lanes, we could build more infrastructure. We could figure that out. We're smart enough to figure out a way to build our way out of it. Another approach is to look at mitigation. We've had concepts of mitigation here for quite a while. I'd say they sort of emerged more in the 90s when we looked at the Renewable Energy Mitigation Program for energy. So we allow mitigation of excess energy use to be paid for through the REMP program. Or we look at even transferable development rights as a form of mitigation. So we do have mitigation techniques in place that may or may not still work for you as the decision makers. We also have the ability to set limitations, and you might look at that as limitations that are concurrent with the infrastructure that we have or with the community values that we want to address. And then there's also a blend of all of the above. So that sort of hopefully outlines what we've tried to do in the memo. And what we've given you what we've tried to do is outline in your memo where you see the arrows on page 2 and 3 of the memo, the approaches, some of the approaches that everyone's thought about for the increase in demand for TDRs. And then we've also talked a little bit about various approaches that could affect these other land use topic areas that I've just run through. So with that, I'm going to leave it up to you to have the discussion. We're here as resources. I've asked Mona to be here kind of as a help with some of the energy questions as well. So we're here as resources to answer any questions that you might have. If in fact we start putting down ideas as we go, Suzanne Wolf has agreed to help us with taking some notes and maybe scribing a little bit for us on that. So we're here to answer any questions, and maybe one approach, I'm not sure how you want to address this, George, but maybe one approach is to look at the back page of the handout where Ellen has taken a list of the alternatives that were outlined on the last page 4 page of the memo. And those alternatives are listed, and think about how they address or how they are addressing some of the needs, and how some of the approaches have attempted to address some of the needs that you may want to affect in the community.
Thanks. And this is a great chart that you put together. And as you said earlier, I mean, really, based on our previous work sessions where we've talked about starting from the adopting the 2015 International Building Code, and now staff has presented us, we haven't quite finished, actually going beyond that code with an addendum to increase or decrease our energy use. The greenhouse gas emissions that we just had a presentation on, all sort of driving towards the county coming up with a climate action plan, recognizing that, as you said, 70% of our built environment contributes to those greenhouse gases. And so for me, all of these boxes lead to the discussion of growth, the development, and the impacts, and how we can mitigate in terms of what we're trying to reach as we work on a goal for our climate action plan. I mean, for me, that sort of synthesizes at least what I think we want to try to get at. And as you said, staff has put together a few options and a few ideas that we've tossed around before. And I think as Ellen just walks through this chart on this back sheet, we can sort of see where we get the sort of biggest bang for our bucks, per se. Steve?
I have one more idea to throw into the pot. It has to do with either demolition versus deconstruction versus repurposing of buildings. And my initial thought was it would be kind of a REMP program for buildings that are going to be, they're bought by a new owner, they want to tear them down. Well, if we made them buy a TDR in order to demolish a house and pack it off to the landfill and not try to save any of the materials, that would be a